Chapter 161, Negative, Piccolo, and Giant Killer. Gurgle. Gurgle. Under the effect of black magic transformation, countless bubbles rose from the blood in the test tube. Ciel watched the spectacle with a fixed gaze, silently rehearsing the numbers in his head. "This is the 257th transformation experiment in 3 days," he muttered. "I hope it does what I want." As the bubbles subsided, Ciel closed his eyes and used his poison ability to probe the changes. Compared to the first attempts, the transformation of the blood had deepened considerably. He estimated the poison's potency. If he released it, it would be more than 10 times stronger than before. This was the strange, powerful effect black magic transformation could have on flesh and blood. Still, when he opened his eyes, a flicker of disappointment showed. The poison was stronger, yes, but against the massive magical sea creatures he would face, it would probably be insufficient. What Ciel wanted was to take the strong life energy of his own blood as a base and transform it into a poison that specifically targeted super-strong vitality. He was nowhere near that target yet. 3 days of experiments had passed. He felt anxious. Blood emerald, poot fruit, all of these things were tied to whether his legendary life and legendary power could advance further. He needed to venture into the North Sea to obtain them. If he wasn't prepared for the dangers out there, it might be luck if he came home unharmed. He hated leaving fate to luck. Still not working? Calm down, try again. Ciel gripped his wand and breathed deep, trying to steady his racing thoughts. He poured fresh blood onto a parchment and prepared for the 258th transformation. Then his eyes fell on the words Lord Voldemort had left earlier. Black magic transformation requires a blasphemous, twisted will. He paused. He stopped suppressing the anxiety, annoyance, and frustration that came with repeated failure. Instead of keeping himself calm and rational as he usually did for most spells, he let the negative emotions spread through his mind. Before, I tried to follow Voldemort, concentrate my will, force the blood, he thought. But with a rational will, true distortion can't be reached. For dark arts like this, I need emotions, negative ones. I shouldn't be calm. I need intensity. He recalled memories that made him bitter, powerless, angry, and despairing. Negative feelings poured into him. On the system panel, the black iron gleam on black magic transformation deepened. Even a bronze sheen began to appear. The wand in his hand no longer moved with practiced, measured strokes. It trembled and shook like a living thing. When his emotions peaked, Ciel slammed the wand against the test tube. "Transform for me. Transform into what I want." A torrent of negative magic, unlike any he had felt before, poured from his wand into the blood. The contents writhed violently, bubbling like a volcanic eruption. When the commotion finally died down, Ciel was breathing heavily, his emotions still raw. He carefully probed the altered blood with his poison sense. Joy at last lit his face. This time the transformation had produced something different, a new kind of poison. It activated by rapidly absorbing vitality and growing stronger the more vigorous the victim. Against a creature of weak vitality, it barely registered. An ordinary person might endure only a headache and nausea as the poison failed to draw enough life to thrive. But against an elephant, a whale, or any creature with enormous vitality, the poison would explode in speed and intensity. He released his control over the poison briefly to test it. Even his own blood couldn't withstand the effect. In under 5 seconds, it turned pitch black. The realization chilled him. If the poison broke free of his control, it could have severely harmed even his legendary life. "Is this the result of combining black magic transformation with my blood?" he whispered, solemn. The danger underscored how strange and perilous the dark arts were. A single mistake could entrap even someone stronger than a dark wizard. But then a calculating light came into his eyes. Such a poison would be perfect against the huge magical sea creatures he planned to face. Even the legendary North Sea Kraken, whose terror lay mostly in sheer size, would wither under a poison that multiplied with the enemy's vitality. His own legendary life was not immune, but the Kraken's life level might not be higher than his. With this weapon, Ciel would have an important trump card for exploring the North Sea. "Since it's a poison tailored for large-bodied, high-vitality creatures," he said, resolute, "then I'll name it Giant Killer." With that, a calm determination settled over him. He checked his equipment one last time, especially his Nimbus 2000 broom, and made sure everything would not fail when it mattered. Evening was already falling. He mounted his broom and flew toward the sea, now bathed in the blood-red light of sunset. Elsewhere, in a house in the magical world, an owl flapped in and dropped a copy of the Daily Prophet onto a bedside table. The headline proclaimed that the Ministry of Magic fully supported Hogwarts students in land reclamation and entrepreneurship, and that Minister Fudge's administration would do all it could to improve magical livelihoods. The paper was the talk of the town. Everyone was abuzz about applying to the ministry for land permits and going to clear and develop new land. Umbridge's death had already faded from memory. Porgy Chalman did not care for the ministry's cheer. His face contorted with resentment as he fixed his gaze on the name mentioned in the story, Ciel Sprout. He grabbed the paper with a bandaged hand and ripped it apart, howling in fury. Ciel Sprout, you damned! You ruined my reputation, ruined my career. You won't get away with this. A house elf rushed in at the commotion. Mr. Chalman, the doctors at St. Mungo's said the injuries Shadow Thorns left you haven't healed. Don't be foolish, Chalman snapped. But when he heard the words Shadow Thorns, a crazed light flared in his eyes. What did you say? How dare you say that in front of me? Don't lie. The house elf trembled, face paling, lips quivering. No, Mr. Chalman, master, please forgive me. Chalman pulled a long, barbed whip from the bedside. The house elf, bound by a master's contract and unable to disobey, crouched and covered its head. The whip cracked across its back again and again. The house elf screamed as each lash opened bleeding wounds. After a dozen strikes, it was barely breathing. Chalman ceased only when the creature slumped, torn and faint. The beating had given him momentary vent, but the thought of Ciel immediately stoked the fury back into a burning hatred. The last academic review at Hogwarts, he had been nearly beaten to death by Shadow Thorns and Devil's Snare in the little greenhouse, and it was Ciel's doing. He'd lain unconscious for half a month. By the time he awoke, the story of the herbology master felled by plants had turned him into a laughingstock. His magazine commissions were suspended. For someone who had always prided himself on a sharp reputation, it was intolerable. And it was all Ciel's fault. He hated Ciel on a level that normal remedies could not wash away. The more he thought about Ciel's talent, how Ciel had independently cultivated variant plants and now had ministry support, that hatred curdled into jealousy. If Ciel were to rise to become a herbology master, that would be unbearable beyond measure. A viperish thought coiled in his mind. Ciel Sprout, I want him dead. What good is a promising future? If he's dead, he's nothing. I want to see him die. Before, when Ciel stayed at the castle, Chalman had no chance. He tried to post a bounty through Nocturne Alley, but the dark wizards, warned by Snape, dared not touch Ciel. Now Chalman had acquired an ancient piccolo, an instrument he believed could summon the legendary North Sea Kraken. He cradled it like a talisman. On the open sea, he whispered, licking his lips, the North Sea Kraken is invincible. Even a dragon could be dragged under and torn apart. Ciel Sprout, die at sea and wash away my humiliation. He swallowed a potion for pain and stamina, climbed onto a flying carpet, and set off for Hogwarts. Back near the castle, Tonks followed Ciel from a distance. In the 3 days he had stayed put, she had taken a little rest, but she had found no clues about Umbridge's death. Her attempts to investigate had been met with coolness. The professors weren't as suspicious of her as of ministry agents, but they weren't eager to help either. Professor Sprout, especially, had been cold after learning Tonks had repeatedly questioned Ciel. Tonks had even searched the Forbidden Forest, but the place was vast and time had gone by. Finding anything on her own was like searching for a needle in a haystack, so she refocused on Ciel. When he unexpectedly flew out to sea at dusk, his trajectory different from previous days, Tonks felt a spark of hope. Perhaps his odd behavior would lead to a breakthrough. She hurried to follow. She didn't notice Chalman trailing as well. Perched on his carpet, Chalman watched their backs reflected in the twilight. Ciel was heading toward the North Sea at night, right into Kraken territory. The piccolo would call the creature quickly. Ciel must die. The woman trailing him must be some kind of bodyguard. Anyone linked to Ciel must be eliminated. Chalman didn't worry whether the Kraken could kill Shi'ar. He didn't think a first year, even a prodigy, could survive such a summoning. "When you die," he muttered through gritted teeth, "Pomona Sprout will come to search the sea. Then I'll send you all together." Shi'ar flew past familiar waters and into the open North Sea. He scanned the horizon, watching for islands. Soon an island came into view and his eyes lit up. "Is this it?" Chapter 162, Incandescent Fern, Flame Enhancement, Gubrathian Fire. What met Char's eyes was an island unlike any he had seen before. The air smelled faintly of sulfur, and the sea around it felt noticeably warmer. All the signs pointed to one conclusion. This was a volcanic island, and a young one at that. The volcano beneath it was probably not entirely dormant and still giving off heat. Char's face lit up. A volcanic island was an exceptional environment. Hot, humid air from the sea, nutrient-rich soil formed from volcanic ash, and a relatively simple ecosystem that would keep competing vegetation to a minimum. It was practically a natural greenhouse, perfect for karate grass and many other magical herbologies. With the right fattening potions to augment the soil, it could outperform most ordinary ground outside Hogwarts greenhouses. He marked the island on his map. It wasn't there before. It must have formed recently. He muttered and wrote the name Sprout Island in his notebook. If the island was indeed new, it might even be unrecorded in the magical world's outdated charts. He might be the first wizard to find it. Char landed and scooped up a handful of soil. The island had formed far more recently than he'd expected, no more than 50 years old. A rumor of Professor Sprout's floated to mind about an ultra-rare magical plant, the incandescent fern. He remembered the description, 30 to 50 centimeters tall, leaves streaked with deep red and inky black spiral patterns with an obsidian sheen, roots sheathed in translucent crystalline material that threw off a faint iridescence. When mature, it bore molten gold sporangia that glowed like sparks. A thing of gem-like beauty, with unique magic and necessary for some ancient potions. But its growth was extraordinarily demanding, limited to volcanic regions that had erupted within the last 50 years. Most herbology masters never saw one in a lifetime. The possibility made Char's pulse pick up. The island fit the conditions. If he could cultivate incandescent fern, it would be more valuable than most herbology he owned. Professor Sprout and Snape would be very interested. He mounted his Nimbus 2000 and rose to circle the island as night fell. The North Sea's weather kept the clouds low and thick. No moonlight or starlight pierced them. Darkness reigned, but that played to Char's advantage. His platinum-grade night vision sharpened everything into clear detail. He could see individual magic particles and discern their colors and properties. The sea around the island emitted a scatter of particles from common algal magical plants and tiny creatures, but nothing valuable. The island itself showed almost no magical particles, too new to have established flora or fauna, no obvious sign of incandescent fern. He sighed. The plant was that rare. Still, he dipped lower for another sweep. This time, he noticed a fissure cutting through the island's central uplift, 3, maybe 4 meters long, wide enough for 2 people, its depth unreadable. Sulfur wafted from within. If the fissure opened toward the underwater volcanic conduit, the conditions deeper inside would be even more favorable. Where others might have hesitated, Char felt no fear. Platinum-grade night vision and legendary life-level heat resistance made volcanic heat and toxic gases more an annoyance than a threat. He gripped his wand and entered the fissure. The smell of sulfur intensified and the air grew dry and stifling as he descended, but it never reached dangerous levels for him. The narrow passage suddenly opened into an underground grotto. At its center, a faint reddish glow pulsed. Char inspected the layout and realized the glow marked the passage to the underwater volcano, where lava had solidified into a layered landscape. If anywhere on the island could harbor incandescent fern, this would be it. He scanned the grotto carefully and stopped, breathless. In a crevice, a dim, molten gold glimmer caught his eye. He hurried closer and found a plant woven with deep red and inky black leaves, shining with an obsidian luster. Its rhizomes were sheathed in crystal. It looked less like a plant and more like a living jewel, an actual incandescent fern. But hope turned to regret. The plant was almost spent. Its gemstone sheen was dulled and brittle. It had been clinging to life in the stable grotto environment and would likely shatter with the slightest disturbance. Only the sporangia at its tip retained any vitality. Tiny molten gold spores pulsed weakly. As Char focused, reward information flashed before his eyes, as if the world itself had marked the find. You have obtained incandescent fern spores. Successfully planting incandescent fern spores will grant rewards: flame enhancement, gold grade; charm enhancement, silver grade. Cultivating incandescent fern to maturity will upgrade the rewards to flame enhancement, platinum grade; charm enhancement, gold grade; a very small amount of Gubrathian fire magic insight, bronze grade. Char's heart leapt. Platinum grade flame enhancement? That would be a game changer. Most destructive spells in the magical world relied on fire, Fiendfire and Dumbledore's famed Firestorm among them, and many were area effect attacks, an area where Char was weak. His arsenal so far leaned towards single-target spells like Sectum Sempra, or conjurations such as Serpensortia for entanglement. A platinum flame enhancement, paired with a basic fire-making spell, would give him real area of effect power. His Dragonfire skill from the Blood Emerald was already a surprise attack trump. Enhancing it with a flame boost could turn tides in a fight. Charm enhancement was valuable too. Char thought of Voldemort's ascent, talent plus a terrifying charisma that helped him manipulate others and even coax Slughorn into divulging Horcrux creation. Any improvement in charm magic could be an advantage. And Gubrathian fire, eternal fire, was ancient, rare. Few wizards could wield it. Dumbledore had once shown competence with it. Even a small insight into that magic might prove priceless. But the spores were on the brink. If they'd been dead, Char wouldn't have seen any magic particles at all. Fortunately, there's still a last trace of life, he murmured. He carefully broke off the spore cluster and wrapped it in a nearby incandescent fern leaf, then wrapped that in another leaf for protection. He intended to bring it back to Hogwarts. With Professor Sprout's herbology skill, maybe they could revive and propagate the spores. That would be far better than chasing volcanic islands around the globe. Turning to leave, Char was almost at the fisher's mouth when the night above erupted with shouts and exploding charms. He froze and peered out. In the sky, Tonks rode a broom, weaving to dodge spells. Across from her, lounging on a flying carpet, was a bandaged figure, Porgy Chalman. Char's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected Chalman to follow him to the North Sea after the little greenhouse fiasco. Chalman's intentions were obvious. Tonks called out between evasions, incredulous. "Porgy Chalman, are you insane? Stop this! You're attacking a trainee Auror. If they catch you, it's Azkaban." Chalman laughed, a sick, ragged sound. "Then don't let them catch me," he replied. "On the open sea, if someone disappears, whose body will they find? No one blames me." He seemed to be in pain from holding his wand up. Then, with a snap of his fingers, a horrifying sound echoed. The house elf Chalman had earlier beaten into near death appeared, bloody and maimed, eyes full of terror, but alive enough to obey. "Master," it stammered. Chalman pointed at Tonks. "Entangle her," he ordered. The house elf's relief was almost tangible. It was better to be ordered than abused. With a snap, it directed magic at Tonks's broom. The broom bucked and swayed as if on a roller coaster. Tonks's usually precise counterspells fell off target. "Bastard!" Tonks cursed, struggling to steady herself. Porgy Chalman chuckled from his carpet. "Even lowly beasts have their uses, don't they?" he sneered. "Now that little boy has no Auror trainee to watch him, and this isn't Hogwarts with professors or that Dumbledore around, I'll finish him myself." He turned the flying carpet toward the fissure where Char had gone, wand clenched, face twisted. Char's grip tightened on his wand. Porgy Chalman was coming for him, and he had brought cruel intent with him. Chapter 163. Watch closely. This is how dark arts are used. When Bogey Chapman descended onto the island, Tonks's face went pale with worry. If Bogey caught Shia, given his hatred, he might do something reckless. Bogey was a laughingstock in herbology circles, but he had magical skill, and rumors said he'd been in league with the Death Eaters. The timing had gone badly for him. Not long after he joined, Voldemort was defeated by Harry Potter. Because of that, Chapman never bore the dark mark, and there was no proof to lock him up. He'd slipped through the cracks. Anyone who joined the Death Eaters had access to some sort of dark arts, right? How could a first year like Shia possibly stand up to him? Get out of my way, Tonks shouted, fighting to steady herself on the bucking broom. She cast charm after charm at the house elf clinging to her, but explosions answered her attempts. The creature kept apparating, dodging her spells. Tonks couldn't break free. With no other choice, she threw a sound transmission charm toward the island. Ciel, hide. Wait until I sort this out. The warning was exactly what Ciel hoped for. With ministry aurors nearby, there was no need for a first year to expose himself. Tonks, though disheveled, wasn't in mortal danger. She'd later join the Order of the Phoenix, after all, and the house elf grappling her was clearly at the end of its tether. It had been doing only the bare minimum to follow Chapman's orders. Ciel judged Tonks would break free soon and call reinforcements. If Bogey didn't catch him now, it would be a miracle if he escaped. Better to wait unseen than take unnecessary risks. By the time Chapman reached the cavern entrance, Ciel was under his invisibility cloak, slipped into the underground chamber. Bogey shouted down the tunnel. Ciel Sprout, I know you're here. Afraid to come out? Your friend's fighting for you. Are you just going to watch her die? Aren't Hufflepuffs supposed to be loyal? Only the cave's echo answered him. Bogey's taunts grew sharper, but Ciel stayed utterly silent. The silence made Chapman uneasy. Tonks's flight was steadier now, and the house elf's movements had slowed. It was panting and wounded. Bogey cursed the creature, berating it for not knocking Tonks off. When he realized the elf might soon fail, he became urgent. He'd sworn to catch Ciel before the aurors could intervene, and he was certain the boy had come into this crevice. With Lumos lighting his way, Chapman stepped into the cavern. Under the hot, sulphurous air, he found not a hiding boy, but an empty chamber, and a withered jewel light, his face lit with greed. Cinder fern, he breathed. There's actually a plant like this here? The cinder fern was every herbologist's dream. If he could claim it, Chapman could reclaim his reputation. But the fern was battered. The spore head bore pick marks, and a leaf had been plucked. Chapman's eyes gleamed. Someone already took spores. Ciel, you little. He smiled fairly. If Ciel had picked spores, Chapman would have them now. He drew a seed from his pocket and slit his palm, letting his blood soak it. His wand pulsed, and from the blood-drenched seed, fleshy, tentacle-like vines erupted. They surged out and sealed the cavern entrance, then spread inside like some living web. Ciel, unseen, watched with interest rather than alarm. Chapman crowed. Surprised? Scared? This is black magic deformation technique, much stronger than your tar transfiguration. I bought it in Nocturne Alley. Your Hogwarts professors would shudder at this. He leaned closer to the vines, eyes alight. No matter how you hide, disillusionment, cloak, whatever, you'll be dragged out and drained. Ciel's expression was thoughtful. The transformation was indeed a dark form of transfiguration, but Chapman evidently only knew how to use it crudely. He didn't understand the underlying principles. The vines were a transfigured form of a flytrap seed, bonded with Chapman's blood. The result was a temporary, blood-fueled mutation, brutal and effective, but crude and unstable. The effect required constant blood input and would revert when the magic faded. That gave Ciel an idea. He studied the vines, feeling the interaction between Chapman's dark transfiguration and the flytrap material. It reminded him of his own earlier experiments, how he'd used blood to catalyze change in a giant Slayer project. Inspiration struck. Blood could be a bridge to guide plant mutation. On his system panel, the words Black Magic Deformation Technique glowed faintly in bronze. Ciel concentrated, tracing the lines of magical force when the growth stalled. He turned and watched Chapman hunched over, bleeding and swaying, feeding the vines. The killer boastfulness vanished from Ciel's mind. The method was crude and needed refinement, but it was a useful specimen. When Ciel flicked his wand, a nearby vine quivered as if tripped. The surrounding tendrils rushed that way and formed a cage, but the cage enclosed nothing. Chapman saw that and, exhilarated, slit his palm again. Blood soaked the seed and the vines spread faster. Before long, almost half the cave was carpeted in living flesh vines. Chapman's voice bubbled with triumph. Run all you want. I'll catch you. Ciel ignored the taunts and kept observing. He realized the crucial element in Chapman's process, a warping will, channeled through transfiguration, using flesh and blood as the medium to distort plant forms. Once he understood that, The bronze-level glow in his system accelerated. His own solid transfiguration foundation, already well into bronze, made the technique click quickly. Add abundant blood and Chapman's experimental material, and the advancement came naturally. When the vines had filled most of the chamber and only one corner remained open, Chapman breathed raggedly, cradling his last flytrap seed. This is it. Nowhere left to run. From that corner, Shia watched every inch of the spreading flesh. He felt no fear, only a cool, clinical impatience. Crude, he said softly. Too crude. Your grasp of flesh and blood transfiguration is primitive. Whoever taught you this only taught you to copy, not to understand. Chapman, furious, hurled the final blood-soaked seed toward the corner. The vines surged. Shia pricked his fingertip and flicked a spray of fresh blood onto the oncoming tendrils, then raised his wand. Watch closely, he murmured. This is how transfiguration is used. The system's bronze transfiguration ignited. Under Shia touch and blood, the fleshy vines entered a second, more refined mutation. Each tendon swelled like a python, pressing into every crevice of the cavern. The scene turned grotesque, a tangle of bulging flesh winding through the rock. Instead of lunging for Shia the swollen vines reversed direction and coiled around Chapman. He froze, eyes wide with incomprehension and terror as the living ropes tightened. He had learned that forbidden deformation charm in secret. The man who'd taught him warned it would get you locked in Azkaban if discovered. Each use took blood and left Chapman weak for days, yet he'd thought himself advanced beyond his peers. How could a first year from Hogwarts, sorted into Hufflepuff of all houses, outdo him? Chapman choked a startled cry, rage and disbelief colliding in his voice. Dumbledore, what have you been teaching these kids? How did Hufflepuff get like this? The vines tightened. Chapman's curses dissolved into muffled sounds as the cave filled with the wet, constricting hiss of living flesh. Shia hidden beneath his cloak, allowed himself the faintest smile. The experiment had yielded more than he'd expected, new insights into blood-guided plant transfiguration, and a very effective, if improvised, trap. Chapter 164. What bad intentions could Hufflepuffs have? The North Sea Kraken. Tonks was frantic in the sky. She'd been bound by a house elf for some time. Even if Char managed to hide, Porgy Chalman would probably catch him soon. She couldn't delay any longer. She had to escape the bindings. But the house elf opposite was determined to hold her. House elves could cast magic without a wand or incantation and could apparate short distances repeatedly. They obeyed their master unconditionally. Even if exhausted or abused, they still had to carry out orders. How could she break free? Then Tonks had an idea. House elves obey their master without question. What if she became its master? Brewing polyjuice potion would be necessary for anyone else, but Tonks was a metamorph magus and an animagus. Her talent let her change appearance at will. Ordinary animagi transform into a single animal, but Tonks could alter her entire look. Taking Porgy Chalman's appearance was simple for her. In an instant, her face shifted. She looked nearly identical to Porgy Chalman. The house elf froze, the magic it had been about to cast stalling mid-motion. Master? It stammered. Another master? Tonks forced a rough, authoritative voice. Do you mean to harm your master? Stop this at once. Now there were two opposing commands, Porgy Chalman's order and Tonks's new command from the guise of Porgy Chalman. The contradiction left the house elf caught between wills. Tonks seized the chance, steadied her broom, and pushed off, racing toward where Char and Porgy had disappeared. She found the crack quickly and saw fleshy, crimson vines spilling from its maw. Tonks's pupils shrank. As an Auror in training, she had been taught to counter the unforgivable curses by Mad-Eye Moody, and Moody had warned about an evil of a different sort, black magic transformation. This is an evil that alters flesh and desecrates life, he had said. Using it on others is as grave as an unforgivable curse. If you find it, escort the perpetrator to Azkaban. Black magic transformation was here. Tonks moved fast. She leveled her wand at the fleshy vines choking the passage. Incendio! A jet of flame roared from her wand like a flamethrower, and the vines recoiled. She breathed hard and stepped into the passage. Even prepared, she recoiled at the sight. The cavern was covered in those writhing, fleshy tendrils. In the center, Porgy Chalman lay entangled, crimson vines coiling around him like a living prison. His wand lay shattered. Tonks strode up to him, furious. Porgy Chalman, this is monstrous. To use such dark magic for revenge, if you resist, you'll rot in Azkaban. The Dementors will delight in your soul. Porgy stared, stunned. He had been immobilized the moment Char unleashed black magic transformation. He had no resistance. He had assumed Tonks, trained by the Ministry, would see that it was Char who had performed the forbidden magic. Instead, here he was, bound and accused. Desperation twisted his face. "Bullshit," he rasped. "I didn't do this. That Hufflepuff did it. Call Dumbledore. Arrest him and throw him in Azkaban. He has the makings of a Dark Lord." Tonks laughed with scorn. "You expect me to believe that? Char is a Hufflepuff. Strange, yes, but a Hufflepuff, using black magic transformation. The dark arts have taken hold of your mind, Porgy. What bad intentions could a Hufflepuff possibly have? Use your brain next time you try to lie." Porgy sank back into his fleshy cage, despairing. He was telling the truth, so why didn't anyone believe him? Tonks came to Char's side, seeing his unnaturally calm face. Relief and shame surged through her. If she'd been later, the outcome could have been worse. She set aside thoughts of Umbridge's death and soothed him. "It's okay, Char. You're safe with me here. This bad person will be taken to Azkaban. Don't be afraid." Char forced a smile and barely contained his excitement. He had not only obtained incandescent fern spores and possibly a platinum-grade plant, he had also advanced in black magic transformation. The bronze-level transformation he'd used on Porgy, while not something to display publicly, could become one of his trump cards and might have applications in plant cultivation. Permanently altering plants could create valuable new variants. The gains were enormous. Porgy watched Tonks comfort Char and throbbed with rage. It was unjust. He had the deeper knowledge of black magic transformation, yet the Auror training dismissed him. Teeth clenched, he pulled a piccolo from his clothes and blew it hard. The piercing notes cut through rock and water. A strange magic rode the sound and spread through the surrounding sea. In an area not far away, the water fell still. Fish and birds vanished, as if the place had become a pocket of death. Far beneath, in a dark trench, countless eyes opened. A colossal black shadow stirred, a mountain of a thing that churned currents at the ocean floor. The legendary North Sea Kraken had been roused. Porgy laughed wildly. "You're all dead. You'll be buried at sea." Tonks stared, incredulous. He was a prisoner with a broken wand. How could he summon a monster? Char's expression, however, had gone grave. In his platinum-grade night vision, he had seen the flute's magic particles as they spread, magic of a peculiar, potent nature. Porgy's threat was not idle. A rumble from the seabed shook the island. Something enormous was approaching. Tonks and Char saw it, a towering wall of water, advancing with terrible force. Through the spray, Char's night vision rendered an outline, 100-meter silhouette bristling with countless tentacles. The flute had indeed summoned the North Sea Kraken. The tsunami struck the shore with thunderous impact. Tentacles, each over 100 meters long, rose and reached to sweep the island clean. Tonks paled. Even an Auror in training might not pierce the Kraken's hide. She caught sight of Char and clenched her jaw. Drawing her wand, she climbed onto her broom. "I'll deal with it. You fly. You're on a Nimbus 2000. Run." Char stared. How could she possibly face such a creature? Tonks forced a shaky smile. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not a Gryffindor. I'm not brave. My legs are trembling. But you said I had forgotten Hufflepuff qualities. I'm not about to abandon one of my own." She cast a stunning spell at Char. Stupefy. He collapsed. Tonks tied him to the Nimbus 2000, waved her wand, and the broom shot upward. Whispering, she addressed the broom as if it could be a guardian. "Nimbus 2000, this Hufflepuff is in your care. Go, hurry. Live for your senior." The Nimbus bucked and then flew, bearing the stupefied Char away. The Kraken would not let prey escape easily. A tentacle whipped upward and lashed at the broom, aiming to snatch it from the sky. An exploding charm screamed out from Tonks's wand and detonated against the limb, but the blast left the tentacle unmarked. The Kraken's hide was too thick. The beast, angered by the attack, redirected the tentacle toward Tonks. Her broom rocked in the violent wind like a skiff in a storm. She saw nothing but the looming, inexorable limb. "I won't even feel it," she thought. "I'll be crushed instantly. Might as well get a cooler hairdo so they'll find me." At that moment, a shadow flashed. The Nimbus she'd sent away returned with astonishing speed. Char, who had been stupefied, had come back at the last second. He hauled Tonks onto the broom, and it sliced through the gusts, narrowly avoiding the Kraken's strike. Tonks blinked, then scolded. "Idiot! I bought you time to escape. Why did you come back? If anything happens to you, what will Professor Sprout do?" Char remained calm. "You following me for days annoyed me, and I didn't want to be bothered. But today I owe you one. Tonks, senior from Hufflepuff, hide behind me. North Sea Kraken, let me deal with it." Chapter 165, Mythical, Dead End, Transformation. Tonks stared numb at Shia'er's small figure. Compared with the enormous tentacles of the North Sea Kraken that rose from the water, even a first-year wizard, let alone a half-giant like Hagrid, seemed tiny. Yet for some reason Tonks felt a fierce confidence radiating from Shia'er. He truly seemed able to handle this sea monster that could hunt dragons. Swallowing hard, Tonks clutched her wand and edged back. Shia'er's face was grave as he locked his gaze on the Kraken in the waves. He took out the vial of giant slayer poison he had concocted with his own blood and hurled it into the sea. He flicked his wand as the test tube struck the water. The glass shattered, and a crimson spread through the sea, suffused with the rich legendary life from Shia'er's blood. The Kraken immediately seemed to catch a scent. The crimson blood was more alluring than anything it had fed on. Sharks, whales, giant squid, even a dragon once dragged underwater and devoured. Under the pull of appetite, the Kraken gave a low roar. The surface churned into a whirlpool. Seawater surged downward, drinking in every drop of blood, and the submerged tentacles writhed as if in ecstasy. A cold light flashed in Shia'er's eyes. "Delicious?" he said. "Then let me give you more." He decisively slashed his arm. Blood spurted like a fountain into the sea. With his experience in making Giant Slayer and his black magic transformation now at bronze level, Shia'er barely needed to think. He guided the spilled blood with his wand, and it shimmered as it sank. The Kraken didn't understand the ritual, why this little wizard would willingly bleed himself, but its hunger drove it to gulp down the blood enriched with Giant Slayer. The first crimson wash was swallowed in an instant, but for an animal of that size, it was only a taste. It wanted more, to drag Shia'er under, tear him apart, and let that legendary life erupt inside its body. The tentacle that had almost crushed Tonks rose again, aimed this time at Shia'er. With a thunderous slam, the appendage struck. The island trembled. Dozens of thunderclaps seemed to crash at once. Smoke and dust belched up, and for a moment Tonks's vision filled with red. Through the fallout, she thought she saw Shia'er scattered into bloody fragments. Porgy Chalman shouted a hysterical laugh. "A genius. So what if he's a genius? He still has to die." Then Shia'er's voice came from the dust. "What are you yelling about?" Porgy stopped laughing mid-sentence, disbelief freezing him. He had seen Shia'er struck. How could he possibly still be alive? A long exhalation, like a giant's roar, cleared the smoke. Shia'er stood there, a ruined, blood-soaked figure. He looked worse than when he'd sparred with shadows and Devil's Snare in the little greenhouse. Capillaries burst across his skin. Blood matted his clothes, muscles shredded, bone exposed in places. Yet he was standing, and he had held the Kraken's tentacle. Tonks gasped and covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. Porgy Chalman, stunned, could only stare. How could a Hufflepuff do this? But his shock quickly curdled into venom. Survive one blow, he thought. He still must die. The Kraken seemed puzzled too. One blow hadn't killed the little wizard. If not that, then the next strike would. Its tentacle rose again. Shia'er smiled wildly. He glanced at the system panel only he could perceive. Taking the Kraken's hit had indeed battered him, but the effect on his body was the opposite of ruin. It was forging him. The lights for legendary life and legendary power burned brighter than ever. His wounds healed visibly as his blood boiled with power. When the tentacle fell again, Shia'er's resistance had increased. He gritted his teeth and held up the monstrous limb. Fresh blood burst from reopened wounds, and yet his legendary life and legendary power flared more intensely. The progress from legendary toward mythical leapt forward as if every second now counted for the work of years. Magic had little influence in that moment. It was Shia'er's two abilities that mattered most. The Kraken, enraged it had failed twice, struck a third, fourth, fifth time, each strike more violent, but each time Shia'er stood like a reef against the sea. With every clash he grew stronger. The resistance he radiated was greater than before. The Kraken felt like it was wrestling a blue whale on land. Meanwhile, the blood Shiar shed into the water continued to run into the Kraken, and at first it delighted the monster. Gradually, though, a weakness began to spread inside it, as if some parasite were gnawing at its legendary life. The loss at first was negligible for such a colossal creature, but the assault increased with every moment. The tentacle that had most contact with Ciel began to numb and lose control. The Kraken, used to being overlord of the North Sea, suddenly felt threatened. With sudden panic, its tentacles withdrew. It tried to flee. Shiaer's eyes flashed cold. He seized the very tentacle that had struck him repeatedly. "You hit me so many times," he said. "Now you want to leave? Did you ask my permission?" Legendary power and legendary life blazed on his interface. He hauled with the strength of a titan. The Kraken's great body wavered for an instant. In that moment, the giant slayer poison worked deeper within. The creature's panic increased. Then, the Kraken severed the tentacle Shiaer held. Without hesitation, it fled into the depths. Shiaer watched the sea level out. He did not pursue. The deep ocean was the Kraken's home ground. Even poisoned and hurt, a creature that size could survive by sacrificing tissue. Diving after it among a tangle of tentacles would be far too risky for little gain. He had already achieved more than enough. On the system panel, the lights for legendary life and legendary power burned with denser, whiter fire. Mythical level remained distant, but the jump in progress from legendary was a qualitative change. He had also salvaged rare material, a severed section of the Kraken's tentacle. Though the poison had already begun to dissolve it, Ciel extracted a great deal of Kraken blood at least as potent as dragon or acromantula blood. It would more than meet the requirements for transforming the third group blood emerald and left enough for further black magic transformation research. This was priceless. Slowly calming, Ciel watched his wounds knit. He turned his head to see Tonks, who had fainted from the blast and shock of the earlier collisions. Porgy Chalman, however, was gone. Tonks's binding ropes had vanished with her loss of consciousness. Porgy had been carried off on a flying carpet by his house elf, a dark speck in the sky. A cold light crept into Shiaer's eyes. Porgy had surprised him. He had an artifact to summon a Kraken. If Ciel hadn't arrived overprepared for the expedition, he might have had to flee. Old Slytherin families had deep resources. Ciel didn't intend to let Porgy get away. Next time, who knew what trouble he'd bring? Eliminate the seed of evil completely. He vaulted onto his Nimbus 2000 and gave chase. At broom speed, catching a flying carpet was only a matter of time, unless the house elf apparated away with its master. Strange, Ciel thought. Why hadn't the house elf apparated them already? Why choose a flying carpet? On the carpet, Porgy came to and berated his house elf. "Why didn't you apparate me? Isn't apparition convenient? How can a flying carpet outrun a Nimbus 2000? You filthy idiot. Are you trying to kill me?" The house elf shook, terrified. "Master, house elves are bound by magical contracts. If the master is in danger, unless the master commands otherwise, the house elf must save the master, even at the cost of its own life. I did not mean to kill you. Your body was too weak. My strength would not last if I apparated with you. Master would likely have died mid-teleport." From a distance, Porgy saw Ciel bearing down on them. He shivered. This Hufflepuff could fight a Kraken. What manner of wizard was this? He thought of black magic transformation, of dark rebirths. In Porgy's fevered imagination, Ciel became the Dark Lord reborn. The more he thought, the more he wanted to flee, to run as far away as possible. "Flying like this? If that monster catches up, won't I still die?" Porgy barked. The house elf replied respectfully, "Master, I sense an island ahead. It bears protective charms left by the Ministry of Magic. Those wards can block wizards and muggles from entering, but the house elf's magic is not within the blocked range. I can send Master onto the island. There are dangerous enchantments and possibly dangerous creatures there. What to do next depends on your orders." Porgy's face lit at once. An island protected by the Ministry. He would be safe. Better the island's dangers than facing Ciel. He barked an order. "Send me to that island now. And you, get off the carpet and delay that monster, even if you die. You are my house elf. Obey." The house elf bowed and obeyed. He snapped his fingers. Porgy felt dizzy. When he came to, he was standing on lush grass. He laughed like a man rescued. He would tell the ministry, tell Dumbledore, he would be the hero. As for the house elf who had remained behind to buy time, Porgy barely spared the creature a thought. A low-born servant, its death was a small price for his survival. On the carpet the house elf wept, but it was not only fear or sorrow, it was relief. "I am a bad house elf," he whispered. "I lied to my master, but I used the rules. The master's command made me do it. I succeeded." Ciel drew level and looked down at the house elf's battered form. He was surprised. Then his eyes fell on the mist-shrouded island ahead. He understood at once. That mist was not escape, it was a dead end. The island he'd been seeking, Daria Island, crawling with five-legged beasts and put fruit, lay there. And Porgy, in choosing what he thought the lesser evil, had ordered to be delivered straight into that island's jaws. The house elf, lying weak on the carpet, smiled up at Ciel. "I am a bad house elf," he said, "but today is the happiest day of my life. I did what I wanted. You see, house elves can take revenge. No matter how noble a wizard, they should be kinder to house elves, shouldn't they?" He closed his eyes, expecting death. It did not come. Ciel held out a small bottle. "This is Dittany essence," he said softly. "Apply it to your wounds. It will stop the bleeding." The house elf stared. "You're not going to kill me?" Ciel shook his head, watching Daria Island's mist. "All things considered, you helped me a great deal. Besides, I'm a Hufflepuff, not a dark wizard. Do I really enjoy killing?" The house elf was silent, then breathed as if freed of a great weight. "Master, oh no, the contract is gone. He's no longer my master. Porgy Chalman is dead." Ciel whispered, "Then you are free." "A free house elf?" the creature repeated, then smiled. "I can't imagine such a thing exists in the magical world." Ciel surprised him. "None, that's not true." He thought of Dobby in the old tales. He asked, "What's your name?" "Eugene," the house elf answered. "If you have nowhere to go," Ciel said, "I have an island. You could live there. I'll provide food and supplies. In return, you can help me with tasks within your ability. We'll set a fair employment agreement. No house elf contract. What do you say?" Eugene's eyes filled with light, and he nodded. Ciel's platinum-level night vision let him see malicious magic threads swirling in the mist around Daria Island. Though he badly needed the put fruit there, he would not go ashore recklessly. He turned his broom away and left. A groan from somewhere else made Tonks wake. She blinked and then jerked upright. She was in the familiar whitewashed room of Hogwarts medical ward. Madame Pomfrey clattered bottles and scolded her. "You can't get up yet. Lie back down." Tonks, dazed, asked, "How did I get back?" Madame Pomfrey heaved a sigh. "Ciel brought you in. He said you flew too low over the sea last night and struck a reef. Tonks, you're an Auror in training. You can't be making such foolish mistakes." Tonks's head pounded as she realized that Ciel had ensured the Kraken incident never became public. She asked, "Where is Ciel?" Madame Pomfrey shrugged helplessly. "Where else would that child be? After he brought you here, he dashed off to the greenhouse. Something urgent is waiting for him." In the little greenhouse, Ciel stood before a large barrel of dark blue blood, the Kraken's blood. He drew a deep breath. The potency of that blood, he felt, exceeded dragon and acromantula blood. Folded into the blood emerald, the transformation might top even his hopes. He waved his wand. A cloud of dark blue mist poured over the increasingly withered third group blood emerald. The reward light sphere on the emerald, which had been faint and nearly spent, flared at once. The characters on the emerald's surface blurred and were replaced by a rich, spreading platinum glow. Chapter 166, Bait, Lies, Knowledge. When the reward information flashed a platinum glow, Ciel Sprout's eyes went from disbelief to fierce excitement. The blood emerald that had originally promised only a silver-level reward had upgraded to platinum? That was a colossal leap. If true, it would become the highest-grade plant he could mass-produce. He drew a long breath and forced himself calm. Even if it's like what Lord Voldemort said about using the blood of various magical creatures to purify bloodlines, this is profound black magic transformation. He let out a low laugh. But this improvement, it's huge. He thought for a long moment. Maybe the North Sea Kraken's blood is far stronger than the other two 5x level creatures, he mused. That would explain its miraculous effect. With his current strength, he could handle an acromantula alone, He could even overpower many dragons, and his heat resistance let him survive their flames. The Kraken, though, had been a different story. If he hadn't prepared the giant killer poison, a head-on fight with it would have been impossible. Most other 5X creatures would be swallowed whole by a Kraken. The Ministry's ratings took only recorded wizard deaths into account. A sea-dwelling monster that hardly ever killed wizards would naturally be underrated. But anyone who'd actually faced a Kraken knew the truth. He looked back at the third blood emerald. Its reward information still hadn't become clear. The transformation was ongoing and the reward orb was flickering again, though far livelier than before. Ciel Sprout's frown eased. The situation was still unstable. Pouring Kraken blood on it isn't a guaranteed fix, he told himself. Like any black magic transformation, it's not just a matter of collecting 3 kinds of blood and downing them. If it were that easy, magical creatures would be hunted to extinction. What matters more is the technique, how you modulate and harmonize the magics in the blood. He didn't know how to do that. The parchment Lord Voldemort had left him covered only the first step in detail. The notes on combining 3 kinds of blood were sketchy, and 7 kinds were all promises with no practical theory. Clearly bait to make him work for more help. Ciel Sprout wanted the bait. A platinum-level, mass-producible blood emerald was invaluable, especially one that pushed legendary power and legendary life up toward mythical. He'd already seen how a small boost in legendary level made a world of difference. But working for Lord Voldemort, he refused. He might accept the bait, but he would never be anyone's puppet. Unless he could grasp Voldemort's most urgent desire, the Philosopher's Stone. If he could give Voldemort useful information about it, maybe he could trade that for the knowledge he needed. Whether the information was true didn't matter. Just the appearance of value would do. He also had a plan to bypass the Ministry's protections to reach Daria Island, full of 5-legged beasts and put fruit. After thinking it over, he wrote a line on the parchment. Meanwhile, Quirrell was reporting to Voldemort. "Master, that boy hasn't bled in 2 days. He hasn't spoken either. We tried to subtly ask about the devil's snare, but he wouldn't say anything. Could he be toying with us?" Voldemort frowned. "Impossible. I detected traces of black magic transformation in his blood before. The frequency is high enough to show how hungry he is for power. He would never resist contacting me unless that old Dumbledore has become wary." As Ciel Sprout's handwriting appeared on the parchment, "Senior Sister, I want to know how to use the blood of 3 magical creatures for transformation." Voldemort's eyes widened. He was suddenly much more interested. He's asking about this already? Could he have completed the first step of transformation in these 2 days? Use the blood of a 5X creature to alter his bloodline. He remembered his own path. He hadn't encountered black magic transformation until late, and didn't complete his first transformation using the 1,000-year basilisk until his 5th year. Now this boy was nearly 4 years ahead. The boy's talent for the dark arts must be extraordinary, but Voldemort also knew how to set a price. He wrote back on the parchment with a faint, sly smile. "Junior brother, senior sister Dyer Fay would of course be happy to guide you, but you must understand, black magic transformation is not common knowledge. The information I gave you before I took from my family. It cost me dearly. My parents scolded me and threatened to disown me. If I steal again, I may have no home. If you bring me something valuable, information I can use to negotiate with them, I will beg them for your sake." Quirrell whispered, anxious. "Master, will he actually provide useful information? He might not have anything valuable." Voldemort's lips curved. "It doesn't matter if he can't provide it now. As long as the desire for this knowledge burns in him, he will do whatever I order, steal, lie, break the rules, to gather information about the Philosopher's Stone. With his identity, there could be a surprising advantage." Ciel Sprout read Voldemort's words. He understood the bait and the hook, and he planned to take the bait while avoiding the hook. He wrote hesitantly on the parchment, crossing out and rewriting, which caught Voldemort's attention. Voldemort brightened and added another coaxing message. He reminded the boy how the professors had low expectations of him, McGonagall, Snape, Flitwick, and urged him to seize the chance to prove them wrong. That was the last straw. Ciel Sprout's writing cleared. "All right, Senior sister. This is secret. Don't tell anyone. I overheard it by chance. I heard that Dumbledore and the others are moving something. I heard it once in my aunt's office. Her voice was low, but my ears are sharp. I heard there's an island not far from Hogwarts in a sea area, surrounded by carefully designed protective magic. There are many dangers. It is said something very useful is hidden there. Voldemort went still. A rush of possibilities filled his mind. Quirrell stammered, "Master, the Philosopher's Stone can't be on some island. Hogwarts is the safest place in the magical world." Voldemort shook his head slowly. Dumbledore is cunning. How could he put something as important as the Philosopher's Stone in plain sight at Hogwarts and tell so many people about it? He trusts no one. This could be a trap to attract attention. Inside could be a fake. Or when I finally reach the last stage, it will be bare, and that old busybody will be waiting for me. The real stone must be hidden somewhere remote and unexpected. I nearly fell into Dumbledore's design. Quirrell's contribution suddenly felt worthless next to the boy's inadvertent treasure. He flared with jealousy. If the Dark Lord resurrected thanks to these leads, would he still be Quirrell's subordinate? He tried to sound cautious. "Master, it might be unreliable. He could have misheard. Or it could be a deliberate lie to trick us." But Ciel Sprout's handwriting returned. "Senior sister, you've already helped me too much. Exchanging a piece of information for such precious knowledge is taking advantage. Let's set a time to go to the island together. If there's anything you can use, you take it. I'll handle the rest. Don't worry, I'm the Sprout family heir. My aunt will protect me." Voldemort radiated admiration. "See, Quirrell? Ciel Sprout is a man of principle." He then began to answer the boy's questions, laying out the bronze-level black magic transformation methods line by line. Quirrell felt a bitter stab of envy as the Dark Lord poured what he had hoarded into the boy's hands. He remembered Voldemort's remark that Ciel Sprout smelled good and wondered, in a panic of wounded pride, if he could gain similar favor. Quirrell hesitated, then acted. He tried to appeal, leaning forward, one hand drifting to stroke where Voldemort's Adam's apple would be. "Master, actually he began. Voldemort's voice cut him off, a cold, instant command. "Crucio!" Quirrell's attempt evaporated in a howl of pain. Voldemort's attention snapped back to the parchment as if nothing had happened. Ciel Sprout, unaware of the little scene, focused entirely on the knowledge now flowing from Voldemort. The bronze-level instructions were complex, but comprehensible. Inspirations sparked in his mind. Balance and fusion of the three blood magics. "So that's how it works," he murmured, tracing the method of harmonizing different blood magics in his head. Char barely paid attention to the part about using black magic transformation to alter his body. Talent issues were troublesome, yes, but with the planting system, they could be solved in time. He had no intention of giving up his human body and becoming something neither human nor ghost like Lord Voldemort. What occupied his mind now was the note about the three kinds of blood magic balancing and fusing, an insight that lit up a path for dealing with the blood emerald cultivation problem he was facing. A flash of inspiration ran through him. Char waved his wand and began working on the third group of blood emeralds that were mid-transformation. Sweat beaded on his forehead. When he finally exhaled, his eyes fell on the reward orbs above the third batch. They were slightly more stable than before, but still far from finished. He felt helpless. He understood the principle of balancing the three magics, but the actual operation was extremely hard. North Sea Kraken blood was so much stronger than Dragon and Acromantula blood that balancing them required extraordinary care and exceptionally high magic perception, something he still lacked. To truly balance the three types of magic and complete this transformation, that he told himself, "I'll probably have to reach platinum-level magic perception and go through a qualitative change." He shook his head. Still, after adding the Kraken blood, the process wasn't merely a consumption of life force. Given time, the third group of blood emeralds might gradually balance themselves and finish the transformation without withering. For now, that was enough. His magic perception would improve eventually. When it did, finishing the third group would be straightforward. Char also remembered an idea from Bogey Chalman's Dark Arts, using black magic transformation to modify plant seeds, inducing specific variants. Combine that with the three blood modulation experience, and the idea seemed feasible, except the difficulty might be far higher than transforming a blood emerald. Temporarily enhancing a plant, making it violently powerful, was like giving an athlete a stimulant. Permanently modifying seeds, though, was closer to genetic engineering. It was a direct improvement of an organism. He suspected even platinum-level magic perception might not suffice. Diamond grade might be necessary. He was nowhere near that. For now, the idea would have to be shelved. He scanned his system panel. All his charms and magical knowledge, including black magic transformation, were stuck, blocked by insufficient magic perception. It reminded him of the obvious. Magic techniques were useless without strong native magic. Magic perception and magic intensity have held me back long enough, he muttered. I need to fix this. There was only one thing that had worked for him before: farming. Since he had already found Daria Island, he wouldn't delay. Reclaiming land had to begin now. Only with land could he plant properly, tame more trolls, and grow more goldfish vines. Only then could his magic perception reach the qualitative leap he needed. After a moment's thought, Char headed for the medical wing. First, the protective wards and the flu network, he said to himself. Tonks woke with a dull throb at the back of her head. The sea scene kept replaying. Bogey Chalman, a strange flute, a North Sea kraken. Most of all, Char standing there taking the kraken's blows to protect her. The memory made her blood run hot and her heart flutter. Her hair, usually pink, seemed almost scarlet with emotion. She started to grip the sheet, then a knock at the door snapped her back. Tonks, would it disturb you if I came by at this hour? Her body shook. Was it Char? It's fine. Come in. Char stepped inside. The air grew awkward. Tonks's cheeks flushed. The usually rebellious Hufflepuff felt suddenly shy. Char felt uneasy too. Could she still suspect him of being tied to Umbridge's death? Tonks clenched her fists and spoke in a quavering voice. Char, about the North Sea kraken. Thank you. She expected gratitude, but Char looked utterly bewildered. North Sea kraken? He said. What North Sea kraken? I don't know anything about it. Senior, did you hit your head and start hallucinating? Tonks was startled. No, we went to the North Sea. We met Bogey Chalman. He used dark arts, summoned a North Sea kraken with a weird flute. You fought it to protect me. Char's confusion deepened. Senior, what are you talking about? How could a weak, miserable little me fight a kraken? Do you want me to get Madame Pomfrey? A bad head injury is nothing to laugh at. Tonks's lips tightened. Weak and miserable? You weren't like that when you were dragging me to the edge for days, she thought, a strange sense of loss stirring. Had Char become embarrassed to be associated with her? Maybe she'd grown jaded, or maybe the age gap, 7 or 8 years, made a difference. She forced herself to shake it off. All right, she said after a moment. Let's pretend it didn't happen. Maybe I hit a reef at sea, but thanks for bringing me back. Char shook his head. You protected me first, Senior. If anyone should be thanked, it's me thanking you. Tonks brightened. So we're at least friends, right? She asked. Char blinked, then smiled. Of course. Just don't follow me around hunting evidence that I killed Umbridge and try to have me locked in Azkaban. Tonks chuckled and cut to the chase. So, did you kill Umbridge? Char opened his mouth. Before he could answer, she waved him off. From my investigation these last few days, you've either been farming or holed up in the library. How could you be involved? You're just a little wizard from Hufflepuff. Murder isn't your style. I must have been looking in the wrong direction. She leaned forward, thoughtful. But according to the Ministry, Umbridge died in the Forbidden Forest. How do I explain that in my report? That's the headache. Char looked at her. Tonks gave him a knowing look, and they exchanged a silent understanding. Char spoke carefully. Umbridge was a high-ranking Ministry official. She wouldn't just wander into the Forbidden Forest for no reason. There must be a motive. Maybe she was depressed about work and went for a hike to clear her head. It's plausible she overestimated herself and entered somewhere dangerous. An accident could happen. That's the line the Ministry should take. Tonks nodded slowly. That makes sense. A lot of Ministry employees can corroborate that she was in a bad mood, wanted fresh air. The report should say the deceased is gone, and the important thing is to comfort the living, suggest condolence benefits to help everyone cope, And to prevent future problems, recommend the ministry allocate more funds to Hogwarts to guard the Forbidden Forest. Dumbledore will surely take it seriously. Tonks stared at him for a beat, then added, bewilderment clear in her eyes. You're oddly good at this. Which one of us has the system? Char's lips twitched. In his previous life, he'd seen too many students driven to suicide. He'd learned how people rationalized grief. Tonks, decisive as ever, set to work. I'll hand the report to Minister Fudge today, she said. Char, is there anything else you need? Char remembered his earlier thought. If you can help me with the protective wards and access to the flu network on the volcanic island, reclamation will be much easier. Tonks hummed. If the report goes through, Fudge will be pleased. He'll approve it. She hesitated, then smiled. I have a small favor to ask. This can't be heard by others. Junior, come closer. Char leaned in, thinking she meant herbs or potions. Instead, something warm and wet pressed against his cheek. He froze. Senior? Tonks's pink hair seemed even pinker. She wiped her mouth, grinning mischievously as if exacting revenge for his denial of the Kraken. What's wrong? You remember my small favor, right? Tonks took her report and left Hogwarts. Before she disappeared, she added, when I'm on holiday next, I'll treat you to butterbeer in Hogsmeade. Char touched his cheek, smiling ruefully. Between both his lives, this was the first kiss the struggling agriculture student had received. He hadn't expected it to be Tonks. He didn't linger in distraction. Tonks would die in the final battle, like so many others he couldn't yet save. There was no time for regrets. He had work to do. Another batch of goldfish vines had ripened. He still couldn't force his magic perception to a full platinum qualitative change, but it nudged up a bit. Char walked toward Hagrid's hut. The trolls were kept there. The vine's orange-red fruit and their heavy reward orbs floated above them. Char extended his hand and let the orbs merge with him. The system chimed a waterfall of prompts. You have cultivated goldfish vine to maturity. You received a reward, magic perception slightly enhanced, bronze grade. When the messages faded, Char checked his panel. His magic perception was still listed as gold grade, but this time there was a faint hint of platinum light showing through. It was weak, but unmistakable. He felt his magic perception become several times more precise. Several platinum-grade charms flared brighter under his control, and the bronze sheen on his transfiguration and black magic transformation improved as well. Char clenched his fists. A full jump to platinum couldn't be far off. Heavy footsteps approached. A male troll ambled toward him. Char pointed to the mature goldfish vines. You can eat these, he said. The troll, who'd usually grabbed at the vines greedily, seemed strangely disinterested. It knelt and gestured, pleading. Following its direction, Char realized the female troll's belly was swollen. She's pregnant, he said. You want a bigger place? Somewhere more comfortable? The male troll grinned and nodded vigorously. Char's chest warmed. Trolls were clumsy, but not heartless. They preferred to settle and farm when given a chance, an impossible dream in the wizarding world. He thought of Daria Island. I have an island, Char told them. I can take you there in a few days. There's sea and hills. You can move around as long as you don't trample the fields. There will be food in the fields. It's spacious. Would you like to go? The male troll seemed to labor to process the information. Then it called the others, grumbling and chattering. Their enormous fists thudded on their chests in a grinding thunder. They roared, Gronak, Gronak. The name Char had heard them use before, troll for king. Before, they had called him that out of fear after he subdued them. Now they called him that with genuine respect, even worship. Char felt something like pride and responsibility settle over him. After instructing them to wait a few days, he went back to the little greenhouse. Many plants still needed tending. Before he started, his eyes landed on the little porcelain bucket he had tapped every day to check how far he was from using the Demeter ritual again. Each time it had sounded dull and dead, still much too soon. The damage had been severe. Recovery would likely take longer than his 3-month estimate. This time, as he reached for the bucket, he felt different. The dulled patterns on the porcelain were faintly glowing. Char's breath caught. Chapter 168, Faith, Excitement, and Treasured Possessions. When Charles saw the odd behavior of the little silver cup, he was genuinely surprised. The mysterious item, suspected to be the legendary Demeter silver cup, had been dormant and badly damaged for so long. He had only just managed to activate it with Demeter ritual magic. What was causing this new anomaly? After a moment's thought, Charles took out his wand and tapped it carefully. A sound, not pleasant but far from the dull scrap it had been, echoed faintly through the little greenhouse. A strange light flashed across Charles' eyes. Only yesterday the little silver cup had not recovered this much. It felt as if half a month of healing had been compressed into a single day. What had driven this change? 1,000 images raced through Charles' mind before settling on the trolls' worshipful faces. Could it be worship, or rather, faith? Charles' heart filled with uncertainty and astonishment. But since the little silver cup was probably an artifact from the Olympian era, the conjecture began to make sense. According to the legends, Dumbledore had told him the powerful wizards of that age had been revered as gods by Muggles. They gathered on Olympus and held grand celebrations year-round, with countless Muggles eagerly offering tributes. That era was the high point of wizardly influence in the world. Wizards even fought wars to win Muggle offerings. At the time, Charles had been puzzled. If Olympus had housed powerful wizards rather than gods, what value would Muggle tribute hold for wizards who could manufacture all manner of alchemical items? Could it be that what they were truly competing for was faith? Today, when I received this fervent worship from the trolls, perhaps the Demeter silver cup drew some power from that faith and accelerated its recovery, he thought. What is the relationship between faith and magic? From Dumbledore's descriptions, it seemed the wizards of the Olympian era, at least as portrayed in myth, were superior to any modern wizard. Not even Dumbledore or Voldemort measured up to the top wizards of that age. That seemed odd. Magic theory had advanced across generations. There was no obvious reason modern wizards should be weaker than ancient ones. Yet after the Olympian era, wizardly power appeared to decline sharply. What was the key? Could it be faith? Before, wizards were worshipped as deities by Muggles. Later, everything changed. By the Middle Ages, wizards were hunted and burnt. Now, wizards are almost forgotten by the Muggle world. Faith no longer comes from Muggles. It only arises within the wizarding community. People's fanaticism toward Dumbledore is a kind of faith. The fear of Voldemort, so intense people wouldn't speak his name, is another. The same applied in Grindelwald's heyday. Even Harry Potter, the boy who lived, became a kind of faith for many. A flash of insight crossed Charles' mind. When Voldemort returned in the original story, he was at his peak. The magical world's fear of him was at its highest. He was stronger than he had been before. And by the final battle, Harry could deflect Voldemort's curses, not only because he was the true master of the Elder Wand, but perhaps because he had become the hope of the magical world. The worship and expectation for him had reached unprecedented heights. On Voldemort's side, a series of setbacks had shaken his followers' morale. The fear he inspired was repeatedly challenged. Could that have been a factor? There was no existing theory to confirm it, but Charles felt this idea was likely accurate. Faith itself might possess mysterious power. The thought led to another. Should he try to gather more faith? With his current influence in Godric's Hollow, if he prepared the ground properly and then made a dramatic appeal, could he draw Dumbledore with the Elder Wand? Charles smiled wryly and shook his head. Trying that at Hogwarts was absurd. In the wider wizarding world, ridiculous. He had no standing to rival Harry. Who would believe him? And in the Muggle world, meddling with public attention would violate the international statute of secrecy. Besides, human hearts are unpredictable, he reminded himself. Charles never assumed the worst in others, but human nature was complex. Even the wizards of the Olympian era had been betrayed by followers. He certainly wouldn't be able to command such devotion. If he risked himself for uncertain returns, the loss could be huge. Trolls, however, might be a different matter. Trolls were simple-minded. They did not know betrayal. If you treated them well and gave them a home, they would repay you with gratitude and worship. If I relocate the troll tribe from the Forbidden Forest to the island, I might gain some faith from them and test what faith can do. I can try to win over house elves too. But for now, Charles cleared his mind, the fundamental thing is land reclamation. These other projects can wait until the protective enchantments are in place and the land is settled. Focusing on them now would be putting the cart before the horse. He took a deep breath and turned his attention to the dying, incandescent fern spore. Before he could reclaim the land, this spore had to be saved. Charles coveted the reward he'd been promised for it, and the plant's value was immense. If there was a chance to rescue it, he wouldn't let it go. But its condition was beyond his skill. He needed Professor Sprout. Charles took the spore to Professor Sprout's office. As he entered, he heard her chiding voice. "Charles, Madame Pomfrey told me you and Tonks had some trouble at sea. Tonks was sent to the medical ward. What happened to make an Auror intern faint?" Charles was about to explain when Professor Sprout snorted. "Don't tell me Tonks hit a reef. I taught her for 7 years. I know her. She seems rebellious, but she's reliable. She wouldn't make such a basic mistake." Charles scratched his head and said, "It was Porgy Chalman." At that, Professor Sprout stood up, her eyes flashing. "That scoundrel followed you? I'll kill him." Charles shivered and hurried. "Tonks already handled him. He's gone where he belongs." "Azkaban?" Professor Sprout said, dismissive. "He got off easy." Charles thought to himself that Azkaban and the island where Porgy had died were roughly the same thing. No need to say it out loud and worry her. He quickly produced the incandescent fern spore. "Let's not talk about scum, Auntie. I found this at sea." When Professor Sprout saw the spore, her eyes shone, and her voice trembled. "Merlin's beard, an incandescent fern spore?" She looked as if she'd found a treasure and then winced at its condition. What a pity. This fern was about to mature and failed, leaving just one spore. She listened intently as Charles described the fern's state, and Charles admired her knowledge, true mastery of herbology. "Auntie," he asked, "is there any chance to recultivate this spore?" Professor Sprout rummaged through a thick book and flipped through pages. After a long pause, she decided, "There's still hope. If it experiences an environment similar to a volcanic eruption again, and with some potion treatments, it might regain vitality. I heard a seer predicted a volcano could erupt this summer. Many herbologists have been waiting for that chance." Her excitement grew. She asked Charles to leave the spore with her so she could begin intensive treatment immediately. Charles, tactful, handed it over and left. But on his walk out, he felt uneasy. Why had Professor Sprout been so agitated? Was it only because she'd seen a rare plant? In her office, Professor Sprout clenched her fists and stared at the spore with longing. "Incandescent fern," she murmured. "This is another ingredient for the talent-enhancing potion. Perfect, Margaret, incandescent fern, and the phoenix tears Dumbledore promised. I've already gathered 3 ingredients." Her voice was full of impatience. "Soon. At this rate, give me 2 or 3 more years and I'll have everything. Talent will never be a cage for my Charles. I will smash it at all costs." Charles returned to the little greenhouse, relieved to have handed the spore over. He could now focus on reclaiming land. As he planned the work ahead, the parchment in the greenhouse came to life again with handwriting, Voldemort's. Since Charles had told him about the heavily guarded island outside Hogwarts, Voldemort had become convinced the Philosopher's Stone was hidden there. The checkpoints at Hogwarts, he thought, were bait, traps designed to lure him out. Dumbledore was always cunning and shameless. But this time, Voldemort had one step ahead. Charles had been secretly won over, and Dumbledore's schemes were clear to him. The more he thought of it, the more urgent his desire to seize the Philosopher's Stone became. He was tired of surviving as a parasite on Quirrell and wanted a restored body. A few days had barely passed, and Voldemort could not wait. He urged Charles on the parchment. "Junior, when are we going to the island?" Charles' expression took on a hard edge. He couldn't rush to Doraria Island with Voldemort on a whim. The 5-legged beast there was deeply sinister. Its ancient black magic transformations were the progenitors of many present-day curses. The two-faced man and whatever defenses lay behind the island's enchantments made it foolhardy to act without full preparation. Charles needed a reason to stall Voldemort, and he had one ready. He wrote back at length, "Senior, I know you're in a hurry, but please don't rush. That island is heavily guarded. We don't know what protections are inside the wards. There's only one chance to get in. We must investigate carefully. I plan to find an island in the meantime, ostensibly to cultivate land there, but actually to probe the island's defenses. When I've learned enough, I'll draw attention to give you an opening to seize what's inside." Voldemort could find no fault with the plan. It was meticulous, far more so than Quirrell's brute attempts at the checkpoints had been. If Quirrell had known how to bypass them, he wouldn't have wasted his strength on the Cerberus. Voldemort sighed with genuine admiration. My Charles, like a tiger with wings. If every Death Eater acted with Charles' care, how could our cause fail? Unfortunately, there are many madmen among the Death Eaters. Thinking ones are rare. He valued Charles all the more for that. A young wizard with remarkable talent in the dark arts who could think so thoroughly was a true asset. Voldemort agreed to Charles' arrangement, and they resolved not to contact each other until Charles was ready. As the handwriting faded, Charles exhaled. He felt a little relief, but his nerves tightened again. This period might be a rare chance without disturbance. There was no room for waste. Voldemort could not be stalled forever. Charles had to complete land reclamation, prepare to plant poot fruit and karate grass, and make full preparations for Doraria Island. If possible, he wanted to keep Voldemort busy so he'd have less cause to bother Charles. How to increase his power quickly? His magic was constrained by his magic perception, and short-term improvement would be difficult. Two paths remained. One, keep enhancing his legendary power and legendary talent, but the new batch of blood emeralds had not matured. To advance, he'd need external tempering. Troll tempering offered little. Only tempering by a North Sea kraken might produce a significant effect. But that creature had fled last time, and the sea was vast. Who knew where it hid? The second path was to gain external allies. Who in the wizarding world would ally with a young wizard like Charles to face a notorious monster and potentially oppose Voldemort? Neither option promised quick gains, which weighed on him. After a moment, he steadied himself. Since other avenues offered no immediate answers, he would not waste time. Back to his volcanic island, Sprout Island. He set his mind to farming. Clearing his head by work might also spark new ideas. Charles waved his wand and cast one soil-loosening spell after another, breaking up the ground on Sprout Island. Though his magical power and skill had grown, each spell's range was still modest compared to the island's size. Loosening the soil would keep him busy for a while, and he had no complaints. This land would yield generous returns. Night passed. Just as Charles labored on, a loud bang of apparitions split the air on Sprout Island. A house elf appeared. Eugene, the Chalmon family's house elf. Seeing Charles personally tilling the land and opening wide fields, Eugene's eyes widened. It knew the Sprout family's standing, far above the Chalmons. As Charles' status impressed Eugene, and after witnessing his magical skill, his dimensionality reduction strike among his peers, Eugene looked at Charles with even more awe. Noble young Master Sprout, the elf breathed, you will surely become an extraordinary wizard. Something like longing flickered in its eyes. It no longer wanted the life of torment it had suffered under a master like Porgy Chalmon. As a house elf, it had little choice, but perhaps under Charles' protection, it could live differently. Eugene had made a decision. It came forward without hesitation and produced a package. Noble young Master Sprout, it said, this is something I stole from the Chalmon family. I thought there might be things you can use. Also, it drew out the short flute Porgy Chalmon had used to summon the North Sea Kraken and held it up. When I sent my former master to that island, his short flute wasn't sent in. It fell into the sea. I found it. Charles' heart stirred. He felt glad he'd freed the house elf. Otherwise, even if he knew Porgy Chalmon was dead, he'd never have learned where all those treasures were hidden. Porgy had been a scoundrel, but his hoard was likely substantial. The package's contents were certainly valuable. But to Charles, the most important item was the short flute. He had seen its effect once before. His eyes brightened. The problem that had troubled him about short-term enhancement of his strength suddenly had a promising lead. Chapter 169, Harvest. Fellow Traveler, Box. Ciel Sprout's eyes lit up as he looked at the flute before him. He remembered the huge boost to his legendary life and legendary power when he'd grappled with the North Sea Kraken. Back then, there had been only a few clashes, yet the gains had exceeded all his previous long stretches of training combined. If this flute could summon the North Sea Kraken, he might push his legendary abilities further toward the mythical level. The North Sea Kraken itself was an immensely powerful external force, far stronger than a Cerberus or a dragon. The Cerberus that once gave the two-faced man such trouble would probably be shredded by the Kraken on the open sea. If Sharp Sprout could subdue or ally with the Kraken, it would be a devastating blow to the two-faced man if he ever let his guard down. Until now, Sharp Sprout's ideas had been hard to execute, but with a flute that could call the North Sea Kraken, everything suddenly seemed feasible. He breathed out, the anxiety that had plagued him lifting. Then his eyes fell to the other items in the package. First were some plant seeds collected by Porgy Chalman. Eugene explained, Porgy Chalman always wanted to prove himself a true herbology master. So he thought he should gather as many rare plant seeds as the other masters. He collected these over the years, traveling around. I don't recognize them, but I thought they might be of use to you. Sharp Sprout sorted through the seeds with growing interest. He'd seen most of them at Professor Sprout's greenhouse. Many could yield silver-level rewards. It would save him a lot of trouble to have them now. And among Porgy Chalman's hoard were some rare seeds Sharp hadn't encountered at Professor Sprout's, genuinely uncommon finds. He picked up a small yellow seed covered in fine hairs. This should be foxglove, he murmured. It's an extremely precious herb used to brew potions related to mental health, Eugene supplied. It's particularly effective against the after-effects of dementors, but it's very rare, only grows where a lot of negative emotions gather. Those places are dangerous. Even my aunt doesn't have foxglove seeds. I didn't expect to find them here. The system panel pinged, and Sharp Sprout read the prompt aloud to himself. You have obtained foxglove seeds. Successfully planting it will grant a reward: negative mental magic resistance, silver level; curse resistance, bronze. Cultivating it to maturity will upgrade the reward to negative mental magic resistance, gold level; curse resistance, silver level; a small insight into the Patronus charm, bronze level. His eyes brightened. Foxglove's rewards were very practical. He already had karate grass seeds for mental enhancement. Foxglove would provide resistance to negative mental magic. With both, charms like Imperio would likely be ineffective on him. Curse resistance was vital too. The magical world's curses could be devastating, sometimes unavoidable. Even Dumbledore might fall victim to a poorly defended dark arts curse. Additional resistance would protect Sharp Sprout. And the Patronus insight, once the foxglove matured, was invaluable. Dementors had become more common after Voldemort's return, and the Patronus charm was essential. He'd planned to practice it before third year. Now he might have a head start. A smile spread across his face. Even ignoring the other seeds, just this foxglove made the haul worthwhile. Next to them lay a bag of ordinary seeds, each emitting a faint aura of black magic transformation. These were clearly seeds Porgy had kept at home and treated with crude black magic transformation to produce flesh and blood plants on demand. For some wizards that would be useful, an efficient trick, but Porgy's methods were too crude for Sharp Sprout. If he used such a technique, he'd refine and rework the seeds himself. What caught his attention was a piece of parchment in the bag, covered in slanted handwriting. It recorded a black magic transformation method for modifying plant seeds using flesh and blood. Porgy Chalman obviously didn't understand the technique. He had only followed instructions blindly. But Sharp Sprout could tell at a glance that the author had considerable skill in black magic transformation, especially in modifying plants with living matter. Sharp Sprout was far from that level now. Surprise flickered through him. Among those practicing black magic transformation, someone had actually taken an interest in herbology. The dark wizard who wrote the parchment had been exploring much the same idea Sharp had once toyed with, using black magic transformation to cultivate plant variants. If Sharp could find and exchange knowledge with that person, it might prove unexpectedly helpful. Did Porgy ever say where he got this parchment? Sharp Sprout asked Eugene. Eugene shook its head, then nodded slightly. He never mentioned it outright, but once, when he was drunk, I heard him curse a dark wizard in Nocturne Alley, saying he was the kind of fellow who would squeeze galleons out of bone dust, greedier than goblins. Eugene hesitated. He mumbled a name, sounded like Ed. I don't know the surname, probably a pseudonym. Sharp Sprout filed that away. If he had the chance, he'd search Nocturne Alley for any Ed who might match. Someone selling research scraps to Porgy would likely be desperate for money, perhaps ripe for being drawn out. He examined the rest of the package. Mostly it was small change and a few gems. Under Eugene's surprised gaze, Sprout handed all of it to the house elf.
Mm.
I don't need these coins, he said gently. But you served the Charmin family for so many years and suffered abuse. These funds will cover your wages and, if you'll forgive the human phrase, compensation for emotional distress. Also, I think house elves need their master's permission to wear proper clothes, and now you have no master. You're your own master. You should get yourself something decent to wear. Eugene froze. Even though it had been freed, it had never thought about wages, compensation, or buying clothes. The idea made it giddy. Sprout chuckled at its expression, then added, on second thought, maybe don't go shopping right away. Porgy Chalman just died, and that might attract trouble. I have a friend, Hagrid. He's no tailor, but he makes clothes from fur. They won't be fashionable, but they're excellent against wind and cold. If you like, I can ask him to make one. Eugene dabbed at its eyes. I will do whatever you command, noble Mr. Sprout. You have given Eugene new life. Eugene will repay you. Sprout smiled and turned to the last item in the package, an astonishingly beautiful box. Hollowed from gold and silver, it was covered in intricate bas-reliefs and sealed with dust and waterproofing charms. This was no ordinary trinket. What's in this box? He asked. Eugene shook its head. I don't know. Porgy Chalman never let me touch it, never even come near. Once when I stepped too close to the room where he kept it, he nearly beat me to death. Porgy Chalman's obsessive secrecy only deepened Sprout's curiosity. Even the parchment on black magic transformation hadn't been guarded so jealously. He carefully opened the box. The sight inside made him pause. He said. This is Chapter 170, Dripping Blood, Ancient Flute Sounds. Inside the exquisite box, Sprout found more seeds, oddly shaped, unlike anything from this era. At a glance, they were clearly ancient, more powerful than normal seeds, like something out of Professor Sprout's collection. Sprout's eyes brightened. These must be ancient plant specimens Porgy Chalman collected. He frowned a moment later. But they're all dried and inert, he muttered. Just specimens. Aside from their value as collectibles, not even a herbology master could revive them. He had seen similar specimens lining the walls of Professor Sprout's greenhouse. Such things were prized as gifts among herbology masters. Collectors kept dozens of them like chocolate frog cards. That explained why Porgy Chalman treasured the box, but it didn't explain why he had acted so oddly around it. If the contents were merely specimens, their value might not even exceed the box itself. Something about it felt off. Sprout turned the box over in his hands, searching for hidden seams, false bottoms, anything. There was nothing obvious, no extra weight, no visible join. Still, his instincts nagged at him. Porgy Chalman's behavior wasn't normal, he thought, unless these specimens are a smokescreen. The real secret is hidden deeper, something he dared not show anyone. He paused, then asked Ed, when Porgy Chalman handled this box, did he ever act strangely? Any small habits? Ed thought for a moment, then answered haltingly. Every time he came out, he'd ask me to prepare a potion to stop bleeding. He frequently used black magic transformation on those seeds, so a blood-stopping potion became almost daily. I don't know if that's relevant. Sprout's eyes narrowed. A potion for stopping bleeding every time he touched the box? Could it be blood? He remembered a rumor from the oldest days. Some enchanted vaults required the owner to drip their blood to pass the protective wards. It was secure, but dangerous. Thieves once murdered a vault owner for his blood, and the scandal eventually forced Gringotts to abandon that protection. Could Porgy Chalman have hidden the same sort of blood-activated lock in his keepsake box? If so, Porgy Chalman was dead. Where would his blood be found? Then, Sprout's gaze fell on the seeds again, the ones that had been altered with black magic transformation. A thought clicked into place. Those seeds were modified by Porgy Chalman, he said to himself. They must have been soaked in his fresh blood. Maybe I can extract it. He raised his wand. The seeds hovered up in response, and the bronze-level black magic transformation on his system panel hummed. Sprout performed a focused, dimensional reduction strike, an extraction against the corruption Porgy had left behind. Under the spell, black-red blood began to weep from the surface of the seeds, seeping out like ink and pooling in the box. He watched, breath held, as the blood ran and was absorbed into the wood. Then the box changed. The carved reliefs and filigree shimmered, moving as if alive. Patterns flowed across the lid, reassembling until a smaller, three-dimensional image of a little box sat embedded in the designs. The image peeled away and became a real miniature box. When Sprout opened it, his heart jumped. Inside lay a seed that pulsed with ancient magic and unmistakable vitality. He closed his eyes a moment, taking it in. Porgy Chalman, he really did get an active ancient plant seed. He couldn't see the exact reward information from the display. Ancient seed details were often scarce, but he was confident it was at least diamond level, perhaps even epic once it matured. Active ancient seeds were exceptionally rare. Many herbology masters devoted their lives to replanting them and failed. This one was a windfall. He carefully tucked the seed away. After the initial shock, his thoughts cleared. Ancient seeds required long-term care and research, not something for right now. The foxglove seeds were practical, but their most useful benefits wouldn't arrive until third year. As for the dark wizard tied to that parchment, Sprout decided to wait until his magic perception improved before chasing further clues. He wanted more strength and more resistance to the dark arts first. Harvest a round of Guardian Tree and Devil's Snare, then pursue it. No, this was not the moment to rush. The immediate priority was preparing to land on Daria Island. His gaze fell on the short flute that could summon the North Sea Kraken. He brought it to his lips and blew. A peculiar magical tone rose and spread through the seawater. Far below, in the trench, the North Sea Kraken lay coiled. It had lost nearly a quarter of its tentacles since their last encounter, and the giant killer poison Sprout had injected had left it weakened. The sound reached it. There was a note in the flute that should be enticing, but the creature, still trying to recover, opened one eye, then closed it and remained motionless. It wanted to sleep. From the island, Sprout waited and frowned. Why isn't it coming? Is it still too injured? After a moment, he shook his head. If the Kraken didn't answer, his plans would be ruined. He picked the flute up again. A famous musician from Bikini Bottom once said octopuses have an unparalleled sense of rhythm. He mused. The North Sea Kraken is close to octopuses. Maybe music will lure it. In my previous life, I listened to a lot of jarring, mournful music guarding fields. I learned a few tricks. He puffed out his cheeks and played again. Harsh, grating notes screeched like nails on a blackboard. It gave him goosebumps. It sounded wrong. Something was missing. He played a few more times, then stopped. The atmosphere wasn't right. He turned to Ed as if struck by an idea. "Cry," he said. "Cry for me." Ed blinked. "Think about all the hardships you suffered in the Chalman household," Sprout urged. "Think about your dead master, Porgy Chalman." Ed, cry. Ed's face crumpled. The memories of abuse and the strange relief at Porgy Chalman's death welled up in him. He sniffed, then sobbed aloud. "I've had such a bitter life. Porgy Chalman, good that you died. Good that you died." Hearing that, Sprout smiled inwardly. This was the tone he wanted. The short flute wasn't ideal, but combined with Ed's wailing, it might work. He decided to go all in. He played a mournful, funeral-like melody, the sort of raw, homesick dirge he'd heard as a child back on the farms. Ed's crying wavered between sorrow and crazed laughter. Together they sent the melody down through the deep water. In the trench, the half-asleep Kraken jerked awake. The mournful music pierced the dark like a bell. Who died? The beast wondered. A distant relative who went off to the Pacific and rebranded himself as Cthulhu? Maybe he was finally being given a proper send-off. The Kraken hesitated a moment. Then its temper flared. It was sleeping. Who plays a funeral dirge at the bottom of the sea? How dare they? With a roar, the North Sea Kraken lashed at the seabed and shot toward the surface in a furious rush. As it swam, the creature felt unease. Something about this route was familiar. Had it been here before? It peered through the water and saw Sprout's small figure on the distant island, and memories of their last encounter came rushing back. That tiny human had managed to match it blow for blow, had cut into it with some poisonous thing in his blood, forcing it to sever several tentacles to expel the toxin. It was still weakened. With a rush of fury and caution, the Kraken suddenly turned and dove back into the trench. The ruler of the North Sea had just fled from a human. Sprout grinned slowly, watching the beast below. He had no intention of diving in, he didn't have to. If he kept pressure on it, it wouldn't disappear. "Let's go," he told Ed. Ed, still wiping his face, looked confused. "Young Professor Sprout, where are we going?" "To the North Sea Kraken's home," Sprout replied. "To play the Swana. Let the feast begin." He mounted his Nimbus 2000 with Ed and pursued the Kraken from above. The creature found, to its dismay, that though it was fast in the water, it could not outpace a broom in the sky. Sprout hovered directly overhead. What did this small wizard want now? The Kraken wondered. It hadn't even provoked him. What was his aim? The Kraken's intelligence told it that Sprout would not dive after it. If the human wanted to outlast it, the sea monster could just hide. It wrapped its remaining tentacles around itself and burrowed into its trench, trying to muffle the mournful music as best it could. One thought ran through its mind. Stay out in the open, human. Keep blowing your awful music. You'll get tired, you'll need to eat and drink. I, the North Sea Kraken, can go a year without food. Let's see who gives up first. 171 Conquer Progress 7 Days. Chapter 171 Subduing Progress 7 Days. The North Sea Kraken made up its mind. It would outlast Zar. No matter what Zar did, it would not surface. Zar stared at the black water. His platinum tier night vision pierced the surface, revealing the Kraken coiled in its trench. He raised an eyebrow. In his previous life, he had heard of a method used to tame eagles. The hunter and the eagle go without sleep, food, or water in a battle of wills. When the eagle finally yields, it can be trained. Zar intended to do the same, to outweight the beast. Patience was one thing he had in abundance. He lifted the flute and played. The grand funeral, 1,000 papers, crying at 7 gates, one rural tune after another echoed across the wind. Eugene's wails only added to the desolation of the sea breeze. The sky darkened, then brightened again. Eugene's throat grew hoarse. Zar told him to go rest and continued to play. Deep beneath in the trench, the Kraken listened. Its species was highly sensitive. They had attacked ships in the past simply because the noise was intolerable. Zar's incessant flute, especially the odd, enchanted strain of his instrument, agitated it to no end. It had never expected a little wizard to play on and on for a whole day. Didn't this little mage need to sleep, to drink, to eat? The Kraken wrapped its tentacles tighter around itself and tried to block out the music. It would wait. Zar had already been playing for a day. Could he really continue? Another day passed. 2. On the 3rd day, the music suddenly stopped. The Kraken could hardly believe it, but soon joy swelled in its chest. It had never imagined such satisfaction would come from outlasting a human, not from devouring a dragon or a humpback whale. Relief flowed through its taut nerves. Its bloodshot eyes blinked. It prepared to sleep. Then, from above, a shrill flute note cut the air, piercing as a red-hot needle, and Eugene's crying burst out again. The sound stabbed into the Kraken's nerves. It writhed as Zar reappeared on the surface, smiling. "Harass the tired enemy," Zar murmured to himself. "Attacking when they relax shatters morale. A little guerrilla tactic." He watched the Kraken below. He had already spent 3 solid days on it. If the beast did not yield now, Zar could not accept it. He needed to push harder. He produced a few more test tubes. His brief pause had been to brew them, vials of giant killer. He tossed them into the sea. As they sank, the pressure shattered the glass and a bright, metallic blood diffused into the trench, tinting the water. The scent was intoxicating. The Kraken's instinct urged it to inhale, but it remembered the injury it had suffered the last time it sampled enchanted blood. It could not afford to take that chance. Now it had to resist another torment, the lure of the blood mixed with the relentless sound. Zar showed no sign of stopping. This could go on forever. The Kraken had never felt such injury or humiliation. Driven beyond patience, it groaned and left the trench, surfacing with a thunderous eruption. Its vast body rose like a small mountain, water fountaining off its bulk. One bloodshot eye after another fixed on Zar, and a deep, resonant voice, ancient and crude yet human, vibrated over the waves. "Human, what do you want?" Zar was a little surprised. But among magical creatures, octopoid beings were notoriously clever. Speech was not impossible. This made negotiation easier. Nothing, Zar answered flatly. I just want you to pay for attacking me the last time. The Kraken's tentacles slapped the sea, waves crashing. You summoned me then. You hurt me. I lost many tentacles. The one who summoned you is dead, Zar said easily. Do you want to go after him? I can send you. Rage flared in the Kraken's eyes. Then it noticed Zar's minor motion. He cut his own major artery and squeezed. A fountain of his blood spurted and drifted toward the Kraken's location. Zar smiled. How did you like that poison last time? I can follow you indefinitely, making new poisons. My blood within a 5 nautical-mile radius should be no problem. The Kraken's fury drained away, replaced by helplessness. No. You're a Hogwarts little wizard, yes? Zar continued, probing. Which house? Gryffindor? He asked. The Kraken blinked. Gryffindor? Salazar Slytherin? I'm related to Godric Gryffindor. His animagus form was a giant squid, so in a sense we're distant kin. Or Slytherin, I know him too. For your founder's sakes, don't be extreme, Zar said, smiling. The Kraken's voice suddenly turned terrified when Zar answered, I'm from Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff, it wailed. No, not Hufflepuff. Only you Hufflepuffs are crazy enough. Miss Hufflepuff used to make North Sea Kraken sashimi. I'm old now. My meat isn't as smooth. Can't you just let me be? Zar froze. What? The Kraken recounted the tale in a trembling rush. Miss Hufflepuff had been obsessed not only with herbology but with culinary magic, searching out rare ingredients for her recipes. When the Kraken was young, she had nearly captured it more than once, trying to add it to Hufflepuff cuisine. It had escaped only by sacrificing a few tentacles to distract her. The terror of that memory still left it cowed. What do you want? It asked now, subservient. Anything but the cooking pot, Zar said. What if I asked you to help me deal with a powerful wizard at sea at a set time? The Kraken paused. That was what all this had been for? Little wizard, you should have said so earlier, it cried, relieved. So long as it isn't one of the 4 founders, oh, they're long dead, then no other wizard is a match for me. Zar asked carefully, do you know who? The Kraken puzzled a tentacle. Who? You know who, Zar replied, solemn. The Dark Lord, the most terrifying dark wizard in the magical world. Powerful, ruthless, extreme in his methods. Zar swallowed and added the part meant to terrify. He especially likes slippery, mutated, slimy creatures. He skins them, drains their blood, keeps them as pets or ornaments on his body, and bites them when he's hungry. The Kraken shuddered, looking at its own tentacles. He's coming to the North Sea? It whispered. He's coming for you, Zar said. He'll be here soon to look for something in these waters. Evil. Too evil, the Kraken hissed. Worse than Miss Hufflepuff. He must not be allowed to live. Zar nodded. Will you act? The Kraken's tentacles swayed with resolve. I will, it said. Help you defeat you-know-who, and I help myself. They struck an agreement. Zar then made one more request. Before we face you-know-who, do me a favor. The Kraken cocked its head. Zar's request was strange. Use all your strength. Attack me. The Kraken had never heard such a thing. Zar explained, to defeat you-know-who, I must seize every chance to become stronger. After a pause, the Kraken agreed. All right, little wizard, you are kind. Don't die. If you die, I won't know where to go when you-know-who comes. Zar had already stepped onto a reef. The Kraken raised its tentacles and slammed one down with a roar. Zar growled, and the system panel on his inner sight flared, legendary life and legendary power glowing fiercely. He planted his feet and braced. The force broke his arms with cracking snaps. Skin split, blood welled, pale bone glimpsed beneath the wounds. Agony tore through him. He spat blood. He ignored it. Each strike registered as a skerrick of progress on the legendary bars. The pain and damage fed the growth he had never managed in years. Zar threw himself against it. Again, he shouted. The Kraken struck again, and again. Each blow rent his flesh. The reef and water beneath his feet ran red. But each time his legendary life and legendary power edged forward a sliver. Under the surge of life force, wounds knit rapidly, only to be torn anew by the next impact. He endured and endured until the sea thundered with repeated explosions of force, and he kept going. For 7 days. Chapter 172, Growth, Titan, Hyena. 7 days later, the reefs beneath Chard's feet had been pulverized. The few stones that remained were stained black and red with blood. Those marks were all he had left behind over the past week. It was no exaggeration to say his body had been destroyed and rebuilt dozens of times in 7 days, Every inch of flesh had regrown. The agony was indescribable. Even Chard, who had endured countless hardships, felt as if those 7 days had been a nightmare. If he hadn't kept recalling his helplessness against the two-faced man, he might never have held on. But when the 7 days ended and he examined the results, Chard drew a long, steadying breath. The suffering had been worth it. On the system panel, Legendary Life and Legendary Power, two legendary abilities, shone noticeably stronger, their luster deeper and firmer than before. Mythical level was still far off, but the difference from his previous state was enormous. At that moment, Chard had the strength to tear a dragon apart with his bare hands. Even facing Cerberus, which outclassed a dragon, Chard felt he could rip its head off in a straight fight. He was still weaker than the North Sea Kraken in absolute terms, but he'd be far steadier under its tentacles now. Then regret washed over him. What a pity, he muttered. Even after wrestling the Kraken, the progress of these two abilities has stalled. It wasn't that external tempering no longer worked. His hematopoietic ability had become the bottleneck. Without stronger blood regeneration, life and power couldn't advance further. Chard sighed. His earlier guess had been right. Moving from legendary to mythical was a qualitative leap. It wasn't a single ability that could flip the switch. Strength needed the support of life force, physique, blood production, and countless other pieces, an entire puzzle to form the complete picture. The road to mythical was long. Meanwhile, the North Sea Kraken was stupefied. In 7 days, Chard had advanced by leaps. Where a single blow once tore his skin and sent blood mist into the air, he could now take several hits and still stand his ground. "Is this really a human wizard?" the Kraken rasped, bewildered. "You wouldn't happen to be descended from a pureblood giant, would you?" Chard raised an eyebrow. "You know about giants?" The Kraken corrected him. "Call them Titan giants. I'm old. In our time, what you call pureblood giants were mixed descendants of titans. The true purebloods, Titan giants, are different." It spoke like an elder telling ancient tales. "Do you know about the Olympus era?" "I heard about it from my grandfather," Chard said. "He caught the tail end of it. Wizards were revered as gods then, far stronger than today. There were powerful magical creatures everywhere. Even our Kraken clan was mightier. But on land, the Titan giants were supreme. Massive bodies, magic, and great knowledge, they were the protagonists of that era. Many beings later worshipped as deities were Titan giants in truth." A thought struck Chard. If the Demeter's silver cup he'd found truly dated to the Olympus era, maybe it looked like a little bucket, not because of poor craftsmanship, but because Demeter herself had been a Titan giant. What to later wizards passed as a cup might have really been a giant's bucket. The Kraken continued with a new respect. "Little wizard, to have such power at your age, among the Titan bloodlines you're a born warrior." It no longer felt humiliated by their fight. It took pride instead. "I never thought the Titan blood would still circulate after so many years. Be careful. If people find out, they'll envy you." The power of that bloodline would drive even the strongest wizards mad. The Kraken added casually, "Even Salazar Slytherin came to the North Sea once, looking for Titan blood on remote islands." Chard's eyes flashed. Slytherin had sought Titan blood, perhaps to fuel dark transformations, much like black magic transformation. It fit Slytherin's pattern of chasing power. But Chard shook his head. He knew he wasn't Titan blood. His strength came from the planting system. Even if his vitality and power approximated a Titan's, his defenses and resistances lagged far behind. Mythical heroes and demigods had Titan blood too. Hercules had Zeus's line, if Zeus were a Titan, but they still fell to poison and dark arts. Bloodline alone didn't make one invincible. He was still vulnerable to poisons like his giant killer concoction, to mental magic, to unknown tricks. Calming himself, Chard repeated reminders. Stay low-key, conceal yourself. This power, comparable to Titan blood, mustn't be exposed unless absolutely necessary. Planting was his foundation. He needed more black magic resistance, mental resistance, and other safeguards before he could be bold. Only when he could plant a whomping willow or even a world tree would he feel invincible. Until then, quiet growth was paramount. He checked the time. 7 days had passed. The protective enchantments and flu network on Sprout Island should be almost complete. He mounted his Nimbus 2000 and flew toward the island. As he approached, a frown formed. The island that had been desolate was now a beehive of ministry personnel. A shimmering protective dome, like a soap bubble, hovered above, taking shape. Around the perimeter, well-dressed wizards watched with hungry eyes. When Chard's broom landed, the group surged forward, offering business cards. "Mr. Sprout, I'm with Mason Wizard Real Estate, interested in buying the land. Perfect site for a wizarding resort. You should sell. This place will be prime after the flue is built." The chatter made Chard's brows tighten. He guessed what had happened. Word of the ministry's protective enchantments and the flue extension had leaked through internal channels. Opportunists saw development potential, free use of enchantments in the flue, and assumed a young first year would be an easy mark. Chard gave none of them a second look. "Not for sale," he said. "If you want to discuss anything, speak to Hogwarts. Speak to my guardian, Professor Sprout, or speak to Professor Severus Snape. Do you need me to ask him to handle it?" Their expressions shifted. Professor Sprout was known as kind and easily taken advantage of. They had expected easy profits. Chard's calm, controlled stance was not what they'd assumed. A few tried a friendlier approach, but when Chard turned on them with a cold look, they froze. The lingering aura from his fight with the Kraken was palpable, enough to make them instinctively step back and give way. Chard strode across the island and warned, "This is my island. Until the protective enchantment is complete, anyone remaining here will be treated as an illegal intruder. You can consult my relationship with the ministry." That was enough. The would-be profiteers abandoned their schemes. Minister Fudge's favorable terms had already signaled the Sprout family's clout. There was no profit to be had here. Most left. A few, however, bit their lips and followed him on. Chard's temper flared when a burly middle-aged wizard stepped forward, forcing a smile. "Mr. Sprout," he said, "I'm Bacon Flint of the Flint family. You must know our heir, Marcus Flint. I understand you don't want to deal with those opportunists. They're beneath you. But the Flints are one of the sacred 28. We're different. We're excellent at real estate." He flexed, showing muscle. "Entrust development to us, and it's effortless. If someone objects, my fist will persuade them. Sometimes that's more effective than a wand. No reductor curse can track it." Chard took a deep breath and regarded him coolly. He had other things to cultivate. He wouldn't waste time on Bacon Flint. "Have you said enough?" he asked. "Do you not understand what I told you? Get out." Bacon Flint's face tightened. He clenched his fists, tempted to make a move, but the auras stationed on the island made him think twice. He snarled and muttered, "Just you wait. You'll regret this." Chapter 173, Foundation, Celebration, Bronze-level Ritual Magic. Bacon Flint left in a huff. Shire watched his retreating back until he disappeared from sight. Now he understood where Marcus Flint's behavior at Hogwarts came from. A crooked beam makes a crooked house. No wonder the Malfoys could take in the Crabbe and Goyle families, but refused to associate with the Flints. Their conduct was uniquely disgraceful. That a family listed among the Sacred 28 could bring the title so low made Shire snort. In the original story, the Sacred 28 hardly ever came up, he muttered. No surprise they were a disgrace. He didn't take Bacon Flint's threats very seriously. He wouldn't forget them, but he wouldn't inflate them either. Once the protective enchantments were finished, Bacon Flint couldn't set foot on the island again. As for other dirty tricks, don't underestimate the Sprout family, and Severus Snape would probably be willing to look out for Shire if things escalated. The Flint family's need to bully a young wizard for advantage only showed how desperate they were. Shire turned his attention to the ministry staff busily affixing small silver items etched with arcane patterns to the island. They'd been at it for hours. Sprout Island was not small, and setting up long-lasting protection was complicated. He leaned in to study the objects more closely. A flicker of surprise showed on his face. Alchemy-related? He guessed. The ministry workers suspicious but not openly hostile. After all, Shire was rumored to be close to Cornelius Fudge. Let him come closer. Shire slipped a few galleons across the barley-stubbled palm of the nearest man and offered a gracious, "You've traveled a long way. Thank you." A few galleons wasn't much to Shire, but divided among them, it brightened their expressions. They warmed immediately and explained the devices they were installing. "These are alchemical constructs," one said. Wand-cast wards work, but they decay. Magic attached to physical talismans lasts much longer. Shire raised an eyebrow. What about the Fidelius charm? The men exchanged surprised glances. Shire, a first year, knowing about the Fidelius charm, they smiled and explained. The Fidelius charm is different. It's not attached to an object, but to something far more mysterious, the soul. That kind of soul-bound magic is tightly regulated and exceptionally difficult. Few can perform it. He added with a meaningful look. And hearts are fickle. Entrusting a secret to a secret keeper, how many Fidelius protections in history have remained perfect? It's safer to use this clumsy, honest method. He tapped the patterned talisman. At least these won't betray you. Shire agreed. For now, this protection was enough. He didn't need soul-level magic yet. He might replace it later with something stronger. After Shire's contribution, the workers tightened their pace. They reattached and adjusted talismans that hadn't seated properly. The protective soap bubble over the island thickened and shone more uniformly by the minute. By dusk, the enchantment had sealed the entire island. They checked everything painstakingly, wiped their brows, then reported back. No Muggle trickery will find this place. Even if a wizard discovers it, the wards will withstand most assaults. Only a coordinated attack by dozens of wizards would break it, and the Ministry would be alerted the moment they tried. Aside from Hogwarts and Gringotts, this island is one of the safest places in the magical world. They left Shire a pass, an enchanted token that recorded who he authorized to cross the wards. It linked to the Flu network, and with a simple charm and an item pressed against it, it could act as a one-time portkey to the island. After explaining, the Ministry team departed. Shire gazed at the island, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. He wouldn't have to worry about being discovered. The plants he cultivated would be safe. He considered other measures. Maybe I'll move the North Sea Kraken to the trench nearby, he mused. That would make security near foolproof. If the worst happens and the final battle doesn't go as the original story, I can hide my family and friends here. He took a long breath. This island meant more to him than a safe base or a resource. It was a future. He looked at the volcanic soil and the empty stretches of land with eagerness. Vast world. Much to do. Eugene, he called. A small, nervous figure slipped out from the shadows of the island. Eugene, the house elf, trembling. Young Master Sprout, he whispered. The Ministry folks were here. I feared they'd find me. If they discovered Porgy Chalman, he swallowed, voice cracking. I'd be sent to Azkaban. I'd be executed. Shire placed a calming hand on his shoulder. Don't worry. The island is protected. No one can come without my permission. He gestured out across the land. Do you want a place of your own? You can pick a spot, build a hut, a straw house, even a castle. This is your home. Eugene froze as if struck. House elves served in other people's homes. He had never imagined having a home of his own. He pressed his forehead to the ground to be sure he wasn't dreaming. Tears sprang into his eyes. Young Master Sprout, he breathed, and dropped to his knees. I will serve you with my life. Shire waved him back up. It's just land, he said softly. Compared to what you've done for me, it's nothing. Then he added, with a grin, in a little while you'll meet your neighbors. He touched the pass and turned it into a portkey. Climbing onto his Nimbus 2000, he flew back to Hogwarts. Eugene fussed with his robes, nervous and excited. Who would his neighbors be? He straightened his clothes obsessively. A portkey appeared on the island a moment later, and 5 massive shapes materialized with it. Eugene's jaw dropped. Trolls? He whispered. Back at Hogwarts, Shire had gathered the trolls from the Forbidden Forest and brought them to the castle with a portkey. I promised you a wider place, he told them. You'll have a home. You won't be forced to move again. You'll have farmland so you can grow your own food. Those who want to come with me, touch this portkey. The trolls obeyed. A moment after they grabbed the token, the same 5 hulking figures stood on Sprout Island. Their small eyes widened, taking in the sea and sky. They thumped their chests and grunted with such obvious joy that their faces softened into something like devotion. Even with limited intelligence, they would never forget this day. They had a home. Eugene felt the same surge, hope. He had never wanted anything so badly. He practically buzzed with purpose. Mr. Sprout, what shall I do? Shire pointed to a central area of the island and marked it out. Reclaim that land. Once it's cleared, you can sow and plant. From now on, you'll never be cold or hungry again. Watch what I do." He cast a soil loosening charm. The earth trembled and loosened, forming neat furrows. Shire scooped up a handful of loam to show them. "This level of looseness is enough. Keep the ridges evenly spaced." The trolls stared at him with fierce concentration. They couldn't cast spells, but their brute strength was better than any tractor. They used their broad palms as plows, pushing and breaking the soil from one end of the field to the other. All but the pregnant female troll worked tirelessly. Trolls aren't subtle planners, so Eugene's nimble hands and knack for organization became invaluable. He snapped his fingers, directing them with excited energy. Under his guidance, tidy crisscrossing ridges began to appear. Eugene's slice-of-life competence when it came to household chores translated into agricultural skill. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd finally found a purpose that mattered to him. Shire wasn't idle either. While continuing the soil loosening charm, he dispersed a prepared fattening potion into a mist that settled over the reclaimed fields. Sprout Island's volcanic ash soil was inherently fertile. The potion amplified it. It wouldn't rival a greenhouse, but in the wild, few soils could compare. From dusk into the deep of night, the island hummed with activity. By dawn, a tidy 10-acre field had been established in the island's center. The trolls and Eugene, exhausted and filthy, laughed together. Shire allowed himself a satisfied grin. 10 acres was only a start, less than 1/20th of the island. If they developed the whole island, they could farm over 200 acres. The yields would be enormous, capable of supporting even epic or legendary level ambitions, if not mythical. The possibilities swelled in Shire's chest. "This is a day worth celebrating," he announced. "There must be a feast and wine." He returned to Hogwarts to collect Hagrid. The half-giant was waiting, eyes red after he'd seen the troll's empty dwelling in the forest. When he saw the island, he hugged Shire tightly. "Shire," Hagrid choked, "I never thought anyone give the trolls a home. You're a good, kind child." Shire patted Hagrid's shoulder. "If you don't mind, bring your mum and brother to the island too. They can live there." Hagrid trembled with relief. The worry he'd carried about his family, his mum and brother living hungry in the mountains of France, was suddenly eased. He hugged Shire again, nearly speechless with gratitude. "Right," Shire said, lightening the mood. "Bring dragon liver cake, cheese, and Norbert. He's getting too big for Hogwarts anyway. Let's celebrate properly." Hagrid beamed. "A celebration. I'll go empty Aberforth's cellar. Plenty of drink." Soon Hagrid arrived on Sprout Island loaded with food, blocks of cheeses, dragon liver cake, sausages Hagrid had made, and 20 barrels of butterbeer. Shire, who didn't usually drink, picked up a small barrel and raised it. "To our home," he toasted, and the others echoed him. Norbert, already over a meter long, soared above the island with joyful, clumsy flappings and shot a harmless orange flame into the air like a firework. On the ground, Hagrid, Eugene, and the trolls celebrated noisily. Within an hour, the island was awash in warmth and laughter. The trolls and Hagrid were already pleasantly drunk and arm-wrestling for the last sausage. Shire watched them, smiling quietly at the life that was beginning. Then his eyes flicked to the system panel on his wand, something he'd been monitoring. The Demeter ritual magic he'd learned from Dumbledore had always shown a dull, black iron luster. He'd experimented with ways to improve it. The chants felt more like prayers than spells, and his proficiency hadn't budged. Now, unexpectedly, the panel shimmered. The black iron glow had shifted. A hint of bronze threaded through it, brightening the rune. Demeter ritual magic. Promoted. Chapter 174. Blessing, promotion, defense against the dark arts. When Demeter ritual magic was promoted, Shia Ersprout suddenly understood what he'd been missing. He had focused only on the magic and ignored the ritual, the solemn, joyful act of celebration and the deep yearning for a bountiful harvest. Without that spirit, he'd been treating it like an ordinary charm, mumbling words and flicking his wand. No wonder it hadn't revealed its true power. As realization settled in, the bronze glow around the words Demeter ritual magic deepened. A new line of text unfurled beneath it, just as frequency light had branched from Lumos on his system panel. After Demeter ritual magic came the bronze-tinged inscription, Blessing of Demeter. Shia Ersprout's eyes brightened. Blessing of Demeter? Was this the change from the ritual's promotion? What did it do? The new line shimmered, but its text looked ethereal, as if missing some necessary condition. Shia Sprout immediately thought of the little silver cup, the Demeter silver cup. Casting ritual magic before had always required the cup. Without it, it was only a prayer. He returned at once to the little greenhouse and fetched the cup. The blessing of Demeter on the panel solidified as soon as he held it. He didn't rush to cast it. From past experience, the Demeter cup was badly damaged and could produce only limited power. The last time it summoned ancient soil magic, it had gone dormant and couldn't be used again for a long time. Only when the trolls had contributed faith had its recovery sped up. This blessing would likely behave the same, powerful but single use, with a long cooldown. He needed to research first, pin down what the blessing actually did before wasting it. Shia Sprout spent the morning in the library, digging into Demeter, the goddess of abundance from the old Olympus legends. There were more records than he'd expected. The Demeter silver cup had been famous. People had studied her rituals for centuries. Some claimed she was the originator of herbology, that she drew knowledge from an ancient tree and could influence the earth's flourishing and withering. Myth and fact blurred in many accounts, but the ritual descriptions, celebrations, sacrifices, the structure of offerings were more reliable. Rituals had been preserved and referenced by later ritual magic, so their records read more academically. He found repeated mentions of blessing in the ritual texts, abundant blessing, grains shining. The pattern was consistent. The blessing of Demeter had always been directed at seeds. Blessed seeds grew into more vigorous crops, with both higher yield and better quality than unblessed ones. Shia Sprout's eyes lit up. To others, a blessing that affected only crops might seem trivial, but for him it was perfect. Better crops meant far more. Higher quality and greater yield were invaluable. He hurried back to the little greenhouse, this time reverent. He let the memory of the Sprout Island celebration fill him. The joy of working the land, the yearning for a good harvest. He adopted the tone of a celebrant, waving his wand and speaking the ritual words. In the hush of the greenhouse, ancient incantations echoed. The silver cup hummed. He tapped it gently with his wand and intoned the ritual chant, Cantada Ovantes, Seges Altaviret. He repeated it, letting the sentiment, joyful song, fertile fields wash through him. On the system panel, Blessing of Demeter flared with a living bronze light. Inside the silver cup, a faint pattern glowed, and points of light gathered within the cup. The blessing's text went ethereal again. He was aware this would probably be a single use before a long recharge. He directed several points of light from the cup into plants in the little greenhouse and watched the reward light spheres above each one. The spheres swelled, but the change was subtle, so slight he might have missed it if he hadn't been watching. The cup's damage limited the blessing's power. It wasn't enough to push a silver-level reward plant to gold. Shia Sprout wasn't discouraged. Ancient texts had indicated these blessings were intended for seeds, not mature plants. Using them on mature specimens likely reduced the effect. He decided to try the seeds he had been saving for Sprout Island, karate grass seeds, which at maturity granted a bronze-level mental enhancement reward. Ideal candidates. He guided the blessing light into the seeds. The effect was immediate and dramatic compared to the earlier plants. Each point of light deepened the bronze sheen of a seed's reward information. Excitement flashed across his face. Rather than sprinkling small bonuses thinly, it made more sense to concentrate the blessing into fewer seeds to raise their level. A single higher quality seed would be worth more than many low ones, and higher level seeds decay less. It also increased his chance of cultivating superior varieties later. He focused the blessing, one seed after another. The bronze sheen strengthened, then clarified. By the 15th seed, the cup was drained. He felt a twinge of regret. If only a little more power, he could have raised every seed in the bag. But he forced himself to be practical. This was already an unexpected boon. On the system panel, the Blessing of Demeter line, though still faint, seemed to be recovering faster than the cup's previous ancient magic ability had. He estimated he might be able to use it again in about a month, a far shorter cooldown than before. That would be helpful, even if monthly blessings were still limited. He carefully returned the silver cup to its place. His respect for it deepened. Combined with Demeter ritual magic, it could dramatically improve his harvests. Aside from Hufflepuff's Golden Cup, nothing else in the wizarding world could do the same. He decided to collect more legends about Demeter and, if possible, find a reliable way to repair the cup. Even a partial repair would be immensely useful. Dawn brightened outside. He paused, wondering what to do next when an owl flapped in and dropped a letter on his lap. Professor Sprout had written, "Dear Ciel Sprout, I know you've been busy with land reclamation. Although I've arranged leave for you, you shouldn't miss classes in the castle." Ciel Sprout smiled wryly. He had skipped nearly half a month of classes. If not for his aunt filing for leave on his behalf, he'd have been buried under reminders from every professor. The first fields on Sprout Island were reclaimed, and his legendary life and legendary power had hit a temporary plateau. Maybe it was time to go back to class, if only for a change of pace. He checked the timetable. Defense against the dark arts. Today? A flicker crossed his face. This would be a good chance to see what the two-faced man had been up to. He headed to the Great Hall. On his way, he ran into the trio he hadn't seen in a while, Harry and his friends. They looked startled, then pleased to see him. "Ciel Sprout?" Harry said. "We heard you were sick. Professor Sprout said to give you leave. Are you better now?" Because Ciel had once told them about Nicholas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone, they still trusted him as an ally. They spoke with a hint of sympathy. After a few words, Ciel remembered Harry's invisibility cloak. He still needed it for his trip to Daria Island and to use against Lord Voldemort. He asked Harry, "Could I borrow your invisibility cloak for a few more days? I'll return it in perfect condition within a week." Harry didn't hesitate. "Of course. You've been out of defense against the dark arts this whole time. You need it for protection." Ciel blinked. "Did you say defense against the dark arts class? What's wrong with it?" Ron answered before Harry could. He waved his wand and cast a few combat charms. Sparks of light flew past Ciel's shoulder. Ciel raised an eyebrow. Ron's charms were basic, but they were clearly combat-oriented. Had Quirrell finally begun teaching practical fighting? Ron grinned. "Professor Quirrell taught us that," he bragged. "He must have been distracted dealing with Snape before, but now he's showing his real skills. He's teaching us dueling in class. Last time Hermione cut him off, offering a polite squeeze. "Don't worry, Ciel Sprout. Your foundation is solid. You'll catch up quickly." Then Harry frowned. "Oh no. Today, Gryffindor has defense against the dark arts with Slytherin. Ciel Sprout, you made a lot of trouble for Slytherin. If they know you're coming, they'll use the practical dueling to get revenge. Maybe you should stay sick and avoid it." Ciel smiled. "Thanks for the concern, Harry. I'll decide for myself. I'll return the cloak later." The trio glanced at the time and panicked. "Potion class? We have to go. Who knows what Snape will do to us?" They dashed toward the dungeons, Ron nudged by a mixture of pride and nerves. Hermione kept sneaking glances at Ron. "Why are you so cheerful? You said potion class first thing was a disaster." Ron was smug. "Because I was thinking about tomorrow's defense against the dark arts. Quirrell called me a genius in the last class. And did you see how Ciel Sprout didn't react to my charms? I must be better than him." Hermione snorted. "He'll catch up. Don't get cocky." Ciel Sprout, meanwhile, wasn't worried about a few lessons or some staged duels. Years of hard work and the advantages of his planting system couldn't be offset by a few classroom exercises. He was more curious about Quirrell's sudden change in tactics. Why go high profile now? Was it a distraction from his own activities? And the way Quirrell's approval seemed to affect someone like Ron made Ciel Sprout uneasy. Quirrell had a knack for swaying people, inherited from something darker. He'd seen it in action. But the trio's matters were Dumbledore's concern, not his. As he walked on toward the Great Hall, a ripple passed the Slytherin table. Someone whispered, "Did you hear? Ciel Sprout is back in class." Reactions were mixed. Some Slytherins remained wary, but others saw opportunity. Ciel Sprout had humiliated Slytherin on many occasions, on the Quidditch pitch and elsewhere. For them, he was a walking grievance. That he had missed so many classes made them think he was unprepared. Today, with practical dueling, it was a chance to settle scores. In the fifth-year section, Marcus Flint tore into a bloody stake and glared down at a third-year Slytherin who sat nervously with a parchment. "You're the Defense Against the Dark Arts assistant today, right?" The younger boy nodded. "Say you have an upset stomach. Come on, I'll take your place." The third year blinked. "Why?" Marcus cracked his knuckles with a feral smile. "To guide that little Hufflepuff who missed all that class." He leaned in, voice low and malicious. "Help him catch up. For practical guidance, a few broken bones and a month in the medical ward are just normal, right?" The boy swallowed, but Marcus's grin said it all. Chapter 175, Cooperation, Staring. Hufflepuffs are going to turn the world upside down. In the Great Hall, at the Slytherin table, the students were still steaming over the humiliation they'd suffered from Ciel. For once, the Slytherins were united by their hatred. "Think about it," one hissed. "How many times has he embarrassed us? This time we take our chance. We make him lose face for good." They traded suggestions for revenge, beat him in front of everyone, curse him with boils, make him vomit slugs, and their eyes shone with malicious delight at the thought of Ciel brought low. Only Draco's expression was unreadable. He looked at them as if they were overconfident fools, stood, and said coldly, "Figure out how you want to do it yourselves." "I'm not taking part," he added. The others shot him strange looks. Someone sneered. "Draco, have you forgotten how Sprout humiliated you? Was the Devil's Snare so pleasant? Now that our chance is here, you're going to chicken out? Coward, a disgrace to purebloods. No wonder the Malfoys can't be trusted with important things. Your whole family's soft." Draco let them rant. He wore nothing but disdain and a faint, cold smile. He rose and left the Great Hall. He couldn't stop replaying a memory from not long ago, the night he'd snuck out toward Hagrid's hut. He'd heard Hagrid and Ciel whispering about a dragon hatching, and Draco's heart had leapt. He'd loved dragons since childhood. To see one hatch would be extraordinary. He'd also remembered his father's words. Befriending Ciel might be useful. If he could learn the secret of the dragon and keep it quiet, it might earn favor. So he'd crept out, and what he'd seen had stayed with him. Umbridge had been outside Hagrid's hut, taking pictures. Ciel chased her into the forbidden forest. Draco had been too frightened to follow. Then Ciel had come out alone. 3 days later, the Daily Prophet reported Umbridge dead. Draco put the pieces together. Umbridge's death was connected to Ciel, perhaps Ciel himself. A first year who could survive the Forbidden Forest and emerge unscathed? Terrifying. What chilled Draco more was that the Ministry let it go, and Ciel even received resources from them. The realization knocked the last of Draco's jealousy and defiance aside. His father's advice suddenly made sense. People were different. If a first year could do that, who knew what he might become? Maybe the next Dark Lord. That thought brought a heat to Draco's pale face. He strode from the Great Hall, knowing the others would think him cowardly, imagining their contempt. He almost laughed at them. With their little strength, they had no business picking on Ciel. Weakness and poor judgment was the real problem. As he left, Ciel appeared in his path. Draco's skin prickled. He lowered his eyes not to meet him. Ciel paused. He hadn't expected Draco, usually hostile, to be so deferential. Then, more unexpectedly, Draco spoke in a low voice. Warning, those idiots will try to make trouble in Defense Against the Dark Arts later. Marcus Flint got a letter from home and plans to be the teaching assistant. He'll take the chance to make a move. Ciel stopped and regarded him with curiosity. Their relationship hadn't been warm. Draco's words were surprising. "You're betraying Slytherin?" Ciel asked. Draco's mouth twisted. "Betrayal? Slytherin's motto is by any means necessary. I've never heard them sing about loyalty or unity. Befriending you seems more worthwhile than hanging around those idiots." He brushed past and bent his voice to a whisper. "There are loose ends from the Umbridge affair. The dragon egg hatching was told to her by a Slytherin about to graduate. He used it to get a ministry employment letter. My father has taken care of it. He asked me to tell you this is a small token of sincerity from the Malfoys. We look forward to future cooperation." He nodded and hurried off. Ciel's eyes flickered. Draco knew about Umbridge, but that matter was settled publicly. Even if the Malfoys knew part of the story, it was too late to change anything. Lucius Malfoy defending Umbridge would be absurd. No, this was an offer of alliance. Ciel felt a little approval. The Malfoys had always weathered political changes, and their influence could be useful. If he ever needed rare seeds, land, or other resources, having Malfoy on his side would help. As for the Slytherins' plan in class and Marcus Flint's intention to cause trouble, Ciel smiled. They'd learned a few tricks and now thought themselves hotshots. He'd remind them who Hufflepuffs were. And Marcus Flint, if the fellow wanted to be the TA and make a point, Ciel wouldn't mind sending him to the infirmary for the rest of the term. He re-entered the Great Hall and was greeted warmly by the Hufflepuffs. Ciel, are you all right? We haven't seen you in ages. Cedric Diggory and his Quidditch mates whistled. You've missed too much training. You haven't gotten rusty, have you? Our final match isn't far off. Ciel relaxed and waved back, making for the Hufflepuff table. Before he could reach it, a line of Slytherins filed past and blocked his way, eyes full of malice. Some hissed low threats. Hope you're as brave as before. Don't skip the defense against the dark arts class later. Ciel's face didn't change. Compared to what he'd already faced, these threats were laughable. He ignored them until a large, hulking figure blocked him completely, Marcus Flint. He sneered down at Ciel. You think you're so great? My father offered you cooperation, and you humiliated the Flint family. I'll teach you the worth of the 28 sacred families. Ciel raised an eyebrow. The 28 sacred families? Other people must be embarrassed to be grouped with the Flints. Marcus's face flushed. If it weren't the Great Hall and other professors were present, he'd have lunged at Ciel already. He ground his teeth and managed a threat. Just wait. No brute force in class as a general rule, but I'll be the TA today. I'll give you pointers on your combat skills. Don't even think about faking illness to avoid it, otherwise other students in your house might get hurt. Practical training involves injury. You won't like that. He left with a triumphant smile. Cedric hurried over to Ciel. What did they say? Just dogs barking, Ciel said. Cedric grinned. Don't worry, I was supposed to be our house's TA for the class, but I won't let Slytherin run roughshod. Marcus Flint is a bully. I can handle him. Ciel cut him off. No, Cedric, I'd rather you not show up. Let Marcus be the only TA. Cedric blinked. But if you don't, then Marcus will have every reason to single you out as a stat. Let him be the only assistant. Trust me. Cedric's expression shifted. He understood immediately. If Cedric stayed, Marcus could claim the right to instruct and use that to take revenge. But Ciel wanted the field to himself. Cedric grinned and clapped Ciel on the shoulder. All right, I'm with you. Go all out. Then theatrically, Cedric limped back to his seat, calling loudly, My foot can't walk. I can't be TA today. His friends helped him settle and hesitated, then shrugged and accepted Cedric's judgment. He winked at Ciel. He'd handled it. Ciel felt a flicker of emotion. Cedric was already a leader. Students older than him followed him. If not for his fate in the original story, his prospects would have been boundless. Ciel drew a breath and pushed aside other plans. Obtaining the Pute Fruit on Doraria Island would have to wait. A teacher's gaze swept over him from the staff table. Ciel felt it and tightened his face, restraining his thoughts. At the high table, Quirrell sipped pumpkin juice, while Voldemort whispered in his mind. Master, Quirrell said silently, I diverted Dumbledore's attention by stirring trouble in the defense class so Ciel could finish his exploration. Now he's back. Should I stop today's practical lesson? The Slytherins seem set to make trouble. Voldemort's cold voice answered in Quirrell's head. Don't interfere. Ciel doesn't need protection. Those self-important Slytherins are mediocre. Let them be taught a lesson. When Ciel sees the benefits of following me and learns to trample them underfoot, he'll crave power. He'll be more devoted to me. Quirrell agreed at once. Everything is according to Master's plan. For Ciel to receive such attention is an honor. When he learns the truth, he will be grateful. Feeling the teacher's eyes move on, Ciel let out a small breath and sent himself a silent warning. Hold on a little longer. The term will end soon. After this year, Hogwarts won't have Lord Voldemort. By the time of the Goblet of Fire, I'll be different. I won't have to be so careful. He looked at his housemates. Beyond their joy at his return, there was a persistent gloom. What's wrong? He asked. Why so listless? Hannah Abbott tugged her pigtails and sighed. It's the defense class. Lately, it's been practical combat. Gryffindor and Slytherin are loving it, but we've been losing. People keep telling us Godric is weak because of it. Susan Bones cut into her steak with force, anger on her face. We don't care about losing to the others, but I won't lose to Slytherin. Those people, my parents were killed by a Death Eater from Slytherin. I won't stand for it. Ciel understood. Hufflepuffs had been hit hardest by the war. Many had relatives harmed by Death Eaters. They weren't aggressive by nature, but some things they wouldn't give up. Being beaten by Slytherin in a high-profile class like Defense would be unbearable. In terms of raw magical skill, they weren't far behind Slytherin, but practical dueling also relied on experience, momentum, and the will to win. There's one thing you can do, Ciel said. Do you trust me? Their eyes lit up. Really? When have I ever lied? He smiled. You have a solid transfiguration foundation. You're not weaker than Slytherin. Practical combat isn't just spells. Experience and determination matter. But for defense practicals, one simple thing can give you the edge. Oh, they asked. Eye contact, Ciel said softly. Stare into their eyes. Don't look away. Don't be afraid to meet their gaze. Slytherins are bullies who prey on the weak. If you don't look weak, they'll be the ones who get nervous. The students brightened. It sounded almost too simple, but they trusted Ciel. Susan gripped her wand and widened her eyes, determined. Class time approached. Ciel and the Hufflepuffs walked to the defense classroom together. The Slytherins were already there, loud and smirking, twirling wands. When the Hufflepuffs entered, the Slytherins threw mocking looks their way, but Ciel's advice rang in the Hufflepuffs' ears. They all widened their eyes and stared back, steady, unblinking. The Slytherins were taken aback. What? Why are you glaring at me? They muttered. The Hufflepuffs said nothing. They simply stared. Slowly, many of the mocking expressions on the Slytherins' faces faltered. They shifted their gazes, suddenly uncomfortable. Ciel watched with a touch of amusement, all bluff and no substance. Malfoy observed coldly from the back. Hanging around these insects. It's absurd if he does well. Marcus Flint arrived as the teaching assistant, and seeing the scene, frowned. Class is about to start. What are you doing? He demanded. Ciel didn't move. Instead, he turned and fixed Marcus with a cold, warning look. The Hufflepuffs held their ground and stared at the burly fifth year. For the first time, Marcus's expression shifted into something like panic. An impossible thought flared through his mind. Are these Hufflepuffs actually going to turn the world upside down? Chapter 176. Battle. Guidance. You really angered the Hufflepuffs. Just as Marcus Flint felt uneasy under the Hufflepuffs' steady stares, the class bell rang. Professor Quirrell's arrival finally eased the tension and the students returned to their seats. Compared with the Great Hall, though, there was a subtle shift in the room. The little snakes were no longer as cocky as before. They had been sure they would dominate the Hufflepuffs, and now unease crept in. That change didn't last long. Marcus Flint and the other Slytherins' faces brightened when Quirrell announced some news. I have some unfortunate news, Quirrell said. Cedric Diggory, Hufflepuff's assistant for Defense Against the Dark Arts, twisted his ankle and won't be able to make it today. Marcus Flint, you'll need to take on more of the assistant's duties. Marcus's grin was immediate. Don't worry, Professor, he said eagerly. Since Cedric isn't here, I'll make sure to give the Hufflepuff Juniors special attention. The little snakes breathed a collective sigh of relief, confidence returning. Quirrell didn't waste any more time. I see everyone is eager to begin, he said. No lengthy theory today, practical training. Now, the two houses will form their groups. Draco Malfoy moved straight over to Xia Guan. Xia Guan, let's pair up. Xia Guan nodded indifferently. The other Hufflepuffs grouped opposite the little snakes, who wore malicious smiles. What angered the Slytherins most was that the Hufflepuffs continued to stare unblinkingly at them, obeying Xia Guan's earlier instruction to fix their gaze on their opponent's eyes as if unaware of the sneers. Several Slytherins leaned over and hissed threats. I'll beat you black and blue, one muttered. Begging won't help. The Hufflepuffs remained unmoved. Clumsy as they might be, they were steadfast. Once they believed in something, they stuck to it. They trusted Xia Guan, and they would follow his orders. Marcus Flint, impatient, called out in Quirrell's place, Start! Spells flew across the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. Draco looked at Xia Guan hesitantly. Should we start now? He asked. He added sheepishly, Considering I gave you a heads up, go easy on me. Xiaguan's expression was cool. The memory of Xiaguan killing Umbridge had clearly sat heavy in Draco's mind. Xiaguan said calmly, "Fine, you go first. Just treat it like normal sparring." Draco cast a tentative spell, but Xiaguan stepped aside before it left Draco's wand tip and the spell missed. "Faster. Speed up," Xiaguan said. Draco blinked and tried again, faster this time, but Xiaguan's footwork, no wand movement, just subtle steps, left every spell harmlessly vaporized in the air. Draco's disbelief grew. He pumped out one spell after another, but Xiaguan's dodges were effortless. From Xiaguan's perspective, it was easy. Years of brutal sparring under Snape had tuned his reflexes and rhythm. The first-year duels they called practical training looked naive beside that. Draco's frustration boiled over. He knew Xiaguan was stronger. After all, the man had killed Umbridge, but he hadn't expected such a gulf. He hadn't even touched Xiaguan's robes. Worse, Xiaguan hadn't lifted his wand once. He'd only moved his feet. Finally, Draco blurted, "How did you do that? Teach me?" Xiaguan nodded slightly. He might need the Malfoys' cooperation later. Besides, Lucius Malfoy's gift of Serpensortia had already helped him. Giving Draco a few practical tips was nothing. Xiaguan showed him the basics. Keep your eyes on your opponent. Anticipate rhythm, subtle footwork. Draco's face lit up as if he'd found treasure. Then he threw himself into the duel with renewed vigor. Xiaguan was mildly surprised. Draco was quick to learn. Within a few corrections, Draco's reaction time improved significantly. It didn't make much difference to Xiaguan, but the rate of improvement was impressive. If Draco kept this up, his abilities might well surpass those in the original story. Xiaguan kept altering his steps, leading Draco's spells, and Draco's expression grew brighter with each success. He could feel himself improving. The earlier practical training had seemed like a waste by comparison. Draco's admiration for Xiaguan deepened. What the rest of the little snakes saw, however, was only that Xiaguan seemed to be letting Draco land hits, unable even to draw his wand to retaliate. That sight thrilled them. They'd been unnerved by Xiaguan's previous dominance, but now it looked like he'd missed so many classes that he'd become ordinary. If their best rival looked like this, what chance did the Hufflepuffs have? Reassured, the Slytherins pressed their advantage. While Xiaguan coached Draco, the little snakes launched dirty tricks on the Hufflepuffs opposite them. They prided themselves on cunning and looked down on the clumsy Hufflepuffs. Some threw ink and, while the Hufflepuffs flinched, waved their wands to trip them with subtle curses. Others feigned conversation, drawing a Hufflepuff's gaze away for a heartbeat and then striking. Within minutes, the Hufflepuffs were at a disadvantage. "Keep going," Slytherins jeered. "Remember how arrogant they were before? Is that Hufflepuff all you are? Don't count on Xiaguan. He can't even protect himself. Practical training's just started. Surrender now if you don't want to get hurt." Marcus Flint, as acting assistant, should have stopped the fights when a Hufflepuff went down. Instead, he watched with smug delight, letting the assaults continue and egging the Slytherins on. "Nice leglocker curse, Blaze. Look at that Hufflepuff try to dance," he laughed. "Crab, hit him in the stomach. Let's see what the Hufflepuff ate for lunch. Ah, disgusting." When Marcus reached the duel between Susan Bones and Pansy Parkinson, his expression changed. Susan had Pansy on the defensive, clearly enraged. Repeatedly waving her wand, Susan shouted, "Who are you calling a pitiful orphan? You trash! Say it! Say it to my face!" Pansy, cold sweat on her brow, was struggling under Susan's assault. Marcus's voice cut across the room. "Susan Bones, enough!" Susan paused, and Marcus barked a command. "Pansy Parkinson, now!" Pansy didn't hesitate. She struck Susan's knee. Susan cried out and fell. Pansy then unloaded a stream of vicious words, as if gloating over her reversal. "Pitiful orphan with no mum or dad, right? Everyone knows," she sneered. "Susan Bones, living with your aunt, unloved, a useless burden. Stand up and fight if you've got guts." Across from Xiaguan, Draco shivered as if chilled by a cold wind. He'd seen Xiaguan's look before, the night Xiaguan had killed Umbridge. Draco froze, swallowed hard, and silently hoped he wouldn't witness any bloodshed now. Yet, though Xiaguan's anger was clear, he didn't immediately strike back. "Are you not going to do anything?" Draco whispered. Xiaguan slowly scanned the room. He took in the little snake's sneers, the Hufflepuff's battered bodies. No matter how hurt they were, even lying on the ground, they still fiercely stared into their opponent's eyes. Satisfaction showed on Shiguan's face. "I don't need to," he said softly. "Do you really think your Slytherin is that strong?" he added, his voice cold. "Because you play dirty and pull strings, you think you can win everything? You'll never hold up in a proper fight." "And Pansy Parkinson was especially wrong," Shiguan said. "She shouldn't have dragged up Susan Bones' past." Now, his face colder, "You've truly angered Hufflepuff." Draco flinched. Many of the Hufflepuffs were bruised and knocked down. They weren't known for bravery. How could they now get up and fight back? But as his gaze swept the room, what he saw chilled him. Susan's insults had changed something. Every Hufflepuff wore an unprecedented ferocity. Spell after spell hit their bodies, and they didn't cry out. Instead, they stared at the Slytherins with relentless, resolute eyes. That stare unnerved even the Slytherins who'd been on top. Some of them turned to run and were tackled, thrown to the floor, and exchanged for a barrage of punches. The balance of power shifted in an instant. Quirrell on the podium watched, displeasure darkening his face. In his mind, he heard Lord Voldemort's furious hissing. "Incompetent! Incompetent!" the voice echoed. "How did Slytherin become a nest of failures? They're beyond redemption. I'm furious." Shiguan, however, smiled broadly. The Slytherins around Marcus Flint were stunned. Marcus finally snapped and bellowed for the Hufflepuffs to stop. No one listened. In the Hufflepuffs' eyes, there was only one goal: beat the little snakes. Marcus trembled with rage, drew his wand, and leveled it at Susan Bones, intending to punish her. Shiguan stepped forward, face ice cold, wand already pointed at Marcus. "You like to bully the weak, don't you?" Shiguan said. "Come on, let's play." Chapter 177, Crushing, Landing on the Island, Surprise. When Marcus Flint saw Ciel appear opposite him, wand already in hand, he froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. He hadn't expected Ciel to be so brazen. Foolish, really. Flint was losing badly to Malfoy and couldn't even retaliate, and now he wanted to pick a fight? Memories of being trounced by Ciel in Quidditch and the humiliating words that had followed, plus the stinging letter from his father, fueled a growing rage. He would take this chance to teach Ciel a lesson. At the very least, he'd make sure Ciel ended up in the hospital wing for months. Marcus hadn't considered whether he actually could. On the Quidditch pitch, without wands, Ciel's raw strength had been overwhelming. But in a wand duel, Flint, a fifth year, believed he had the advantage. He'd learned spells Ciel might never have heard of. Confidence showed in his sneer as he twirled his wand and mocked. "Since you insist on challenging your assistant professor, I'll give you some pointers. Go on, make the first move. Let me see what wondrous charms you have." Ciel only smiled. He was done wasting words on Marcus. With a flick of his wand, he thrust it forward and chanted a short, sharp charm. Serpensortia! A puff of smoke erupted, and in an instant condensed into a five-headed serpent whose heads reared up nearly to the ceiling. The hiss that filled the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom stopped everyone cold. The thing was enormous. Dark, glossy scales, forked tongues flicking, cold, slitted eyes, and all five heads fixed on Marcus Flint as if they had found a mouse. Marcus went white. His hand trembled so hard, his wand clattered from his fingers, and he sagged to the floor. The serpent slithered forward, its massive bodies rolling over him. Even though a conjured serpent didn't carry the full weight of a real one, the crushing was enough. Bones cracked audibly as the beast passed. The entire classroom went pale. Professor Quirrell, who stood at the front, looked even whiter than the students, as if the sight might kill him. No one dared speak. One of the Slytherins stammered, trying to take control. "Ciel, you're injuring a student. Stop at once, or you'll be punished under school rules." Ciel looked genuinely puzzled. "Injuring a student? Did I? Who did my charm hit?" He walked forward casually, paused, then pressed down with his foot on the fingers that still clutched at Flint's fallen wand. He ground his shoe down slowly. Flint cried out and then went limp. Ciel feigned surprise. "Oh dear, there was someone in my blind spot. My charm is big. My blind spot is huge. When it rolled over him, I thought it was a speed bump. Why is someone lying here? Isn't this a staged accident?" The Slytherins' faces hardened with anger, but their anger turned to panic as they considered the scene and its consequences. "Who are you trying to fool?" they muttered, but no one wanted to object. Susan kicked Marcus for good measure. Pansy Parkinson, across from her with a bruised face, flinched as if the kick had landed on her. The Slytherins wanted nothing more than to vanish. Draco Malfoy, feeling particularly gratified, Flint's family and the Malfoys were not friends, declared, "I have no objection. He was lying in the aisle by himself. Who can he blame?" He stepped over the unconscious Flint with a small, pleased smile. One by one, the other Slytherins followed, each quick to avoid any blame. With the room cleared of opposition, Ciel dispelled the Serpensortia charm. The Gryffindors who'd been dueling the Slytherins let out long, laughing breaths, suddenly exuberant. After many defeats in practical duels, they had been starved for a win. Voices rang out, "We won! I beat the Slytherin opposite me until he cried. I knocked out his front tooth." Susan, waving her swollen fist, crowed, "I practically gave Pansy a facelift. Charge her for plastic surgery." Their confidence swelled as they looked at Ciel. Even absent from class for so long, he seemed to do everything effortlessly. Ciel, taking in their bruised but delighted faces, asked with a small smile, "You've been standing for so long. Aren't you sore?" The aches hit them all at once. "Ow, my face is so swollen. It hurts so much. Beating people up hurts you too. Maybe I'll go easier on Slytherin next time." Ciel chuckled at the thought. If they kept improving like this, he mused, what would they be like by 7th year? Besides gardening, there wasn't much else Ciel could contribute at Hogwarts. He didn't care about the larger rivalries between houses or the antics of the famous trio. His hope was simple, that his Gryffindors would quietly grow stronger. Smiling, he left the classroom. At midday in the potions classroom, Harry, Ron, and Hermione hurried out, still smarting from Snape's barbed remarks. Ron could barely contain his curiosity about what had happened in Gryffindor's defense against the dark arts class, especially about Ciel's showing. If Ciel could be beaten in even one subject, Ron thought, he'd be happy. Hermione was worried. "Those Slytherins will play rough. They were nasty when they dueled us. I hope Ciel wasn't hurt." As they pushed through the corridor, they heard whispers. "Dozens of bones broken," one voice said. "He'll be out for months." Hermione paled. Ron lunged into a crowd to get answers. "What happened? Who got hurt? Ciel, did Slytherin go that far?" The crowd's correction hit him like a bucket of cold water. "No, you've got it wrong. It was the Slytherins who got trampled. Ciel conjured a 5-headed serpent, and the Slytherins backed down. Marcus Flint fainted without even casting a spell." Ron froze. Heat flushed his face. Earlier, he'd been smug, bragging that Quirrell had called him a genius in defense against the dark arts. If he was a genius, then what did that make Ciel? All the competitive fire drained from him. His triumphant ambition evaporated. Hermione, by contrast, relaxed and let a small, pleased smile show. Back at the little greenhouse, Ciel treated the whole class disturbance as a minor aside and turned his mind to other things. The plants in the greenhouse needed time and care. The first phase of reclaiming Sprout Island was complete. Most spells were at a bottleneck until he could get the Pute fruit. The sooner he found it, the sooner he could progress. The end of the school year and the competition for the Philosopher's Stone was drawing near, but Ciel wanted no part of that scramble. He wanted to farm and research magic quietly. To do that, though, he had to put the two-faced man problem behind him so the man could no longer interfere. Doraria Island was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. He sat and planned carefully, then wrote a line on a scrap of parchment. "Senior sister, I caused quite a stir at the castle today. Many students were injured, and the professors will be busy. Tonight is our best chance to explore that island." On the other side of things, as words formed on the parchment, Lord Voldemort's eyes burned with joy. "It seems the Philosopher's Stone will fall into my hands tonight," he hissed. "Dumbledore, you old fool, when you see me return to Hogwarts in full power, I'll give you a surprise." Quirrell choked out congratulations to his master, relieved at the thought that after so long, the stone might finally be within their reach. Quirrell had felt something eating at him, an ache in his blood. He'd suspected the unicorn's curse. The stone would fix everything. Ciel returned to Sprout Island by Portkey. He took the invisibility cloak, Shadow, and even the house elf Eugene, who would act under the cloak. He carried a one-time portkey and, counting all his means of exit, had 4 ways off the island, enough redundancy to avoid being stranded. He brought the potions Snape had supplied and a few vials of prepared blood. After checking broom, wand, and cloak one last time, Ciel blew a short note on a small flute, summoning the North Sea Kraken. "Tonight, you know who will come to the North Sea," he told the creature. "Everything goes as we agreed. You guard that spot, and I'll make an opening." The Kraken's tentacles rippled, and it slipped back beneath the waves. With all preparations made, Ciel flew toward the Doraria spot he'd previously found. A half-hour later, a mist bank rose before him, a barrier of dangerous magic. He circled, then tied his last message to a stone and hurled it into the sea. "Senior sister," the note read, "I found a loophole in the island's protective magic. Deep in the seabed, the protection is weak. You can pass through there to land. I'll go to the island first to draw danger outward. Time is short. Come quickly." The bubblehead charm was placed on Eugene, the broom hidden among submerged reefs, and then the two dove beneath the waves. The loophole Ciel had told the two-faced man about was real. It had been given to him by the Kraken. But everything else in the note was his own deception. He would not be the one attracting danger for the two-faced man. Quite the opposite. He would use the two-faced man to draw the five-legged beasts and then spring a larger surprise on him later. If his opponent was cautious and methodical, he might see through the ruse, so Ciel stressed urgency to bait him. With Voldemort's lust for the Philosopher's Stone, this should be easy. At the shore of the seabed, the protective magic was weaker than on the surface. It could still keep the five-legged beasts from leaving the island, but it no longer presented much of a barrier to wizards. Ciel and Eugene pressed on and, wrapped in the invisibility cloak, slipped through. The air changed. The island exhaled a damp, oppressive magic that made even Ciel wary. He cast a bubblehead charm on himself as well, to be safe. On the beach where they surfaced, Ciel tossed over a dozen test tubes filled with his blood and left them to smash. The quick-spreading scent of blood on the breeze worked exactly as he expected. Rustling sounds rose from the undergrowth, then eerie, half-human voices. Creatures burst out, towering monsters covered in red fur, each with 5 human hands serving as feet. They bolted for the spot where the blood smelled strongest. Ciel's pupils narrowed. Eugene pressed a hand to his mouth to stifle a gasp. Among the red fur, deformed human heads protruded, greedily licking at the blood. Even having read countless descriptions of the five-legged beast, Ciel felt a chill at the brute reality of them. What dark transformation could twist a human into such a thing? These were the five-legged beasts, the most dangerous of the Ministry's 5 X-rated creatures. Newt Scamander hadn't even kept one, yet Ciel watched them gather with a strange satisfaction. The welcome gift he'd prepared for the two-faced man would satisfy them very well. He and Eugene moved inland. Not long after they vanished into the trees, bubbles broke the sea's surface. Quirrell's scarf bobbed up, and Voldemort's elated voice echoed inside his head. "Past. Effortless. Ciel is reliable. Quirrell, go to the island and find the stone." Quirrell stiffened. "Master, something's wrong. Why are so many looking at us? Are they drooling?" Voldemort took control, and his mood flipped to cold panic for a heartbeat as he saw the sight on the beach. Dozens of five-legged beasts had crested the sands and were staring straight at them. Before they could react, the beasts leaped into the water and swam toward Quirrell with a single cry. "Meat! Meat!" Quirrell shrieked, horrified. "Master, it's a trap! Ciel tricked us!" Voldemort's face twisted in fury. "No! Ciel is loyal! This must be Dumbledore. Only Dumbledore could set something so insidious." He felt the blood-strengthening potion working. He wasn't back to full power, but he had enough strength to fight. "You insidious old fool, Dumbledore. Do you know how much strength I've regained? I will take the stone. No one can stop me." Voldemort raised his wand. A terrible power flared, black flames licking upward and coalescing into a monstrous form as hideous as the five-legged beasts themselves. The display drew more of the island's monsters toward the shore. Ciel, already away from the beach, could feel the surge of magic. Good, he thought. Voldemort's commotion would pull most of the five-legged beasts toward him. That would make Ciel's work farther inland much safer. Ciel and Eugene hurried deeper into the island. They emerged into a clearing by some ruined buildings. once the homes of a wizarding family who had lived here long ago. Ciel's gaze fell on a dense cluster of round fruits growing on a low tree. His hand tightened under the invisibility cloak. Poot fruit. Found. Chapter 178. Extermination. Temple. Ancient Dark Arts. Charles tightened his grip as he stared at the large patch of pute fruit before him. To most people, it was just an odd, filling crop. To him, it was another piece of the puzzle toward obtaining mythical-level life and power. Pute fruit were also the only way to meet the food requirements for taming trolls. Only then could he increase the yield of his goldfish vine. He had been stuck at the threshold of platinum-level magic perception for a long time. His magic cultivation had plateaued. That was only the platinum threshold. Diamond and epic would be much higher. If he didn't plan to increase goldfish vine production now, he might not reach epic-level perception by the final battle. If that happened, he would be trapped in an awkward middle state, powerless to kill Anthony Dolohov or to change the fates of others. That was why he needed the pute fruit. He didn't let himself be distracted by how close the fruit was. Near the fields, he noticed several five-legged beasts lurking, smaller than the ones on the beach, clearly juveniles. Too weak to take part in the beach siege, they were left behind to guard the pute fruit. Trapped on Doraria Island and unable to eat human flesh, the pute fruit had become vital forage for them. Charles counted them quickly. 1, 2, 3, he frowned. 5 in total. They've been circling, never resting. His expression darkened. Pute fruit grew from tubers. To plant enough on Sprout Island, he'd need a lot of them. Even with the invisibility cloak, harvesting carefully would alert the beasts. They weren't stupid. If they noticed large amounts of fruit gone, they would search every inch. That would be time-consuming, inefficient, and risky. He needed to secure the fruit quickly, preferably before the five-legged beasts on the beach were all killed by Lord Voldemort. A cold light flashed in his eyes. If he didn't kill these 5 juveniles, harvesting would be almost impossible. Charles didn't love taking risks, but sometimes a gamble avoided worse dangers later. He had prepared for this. Under the invisibility cloak, his head was wrapped in the Bubblehead Charm's bubble. The water enhancement effect had been triggered. His magic perception and magic intensity were currently at their peak, and his thoughts felt sharper than usual. In his hand, the sharp thorns of shadow thorns glinted. Shadows writhed at his feet. He exchanged a glance with Eugene. Eugene snapped his fingers. The ground surged, soil rose, and several stones were hurled toward the juvenile 5-legged beasts. High, childlike screams erupted from their red fur. Little human faces, children's heads, popped out one by one, wailing. Their 5 small human hands lashed out, smashing stones to pieces and casting charms. The beasts' hands fired spells like a machine gun. Malicious streaks of magic shot forward, each capable of inflicting terrible pain. Behind them, a silent vortex of shadow formed on the ground. The writhing shadows tightened into blades and swords that stretched toward the 5-legged beast nearest the shadow thorns. Before the creature could react, the shadow, solid as steel, twisted fiercely. A child's head that had poked from its red fur was severed and fell, foul blood spraying the grass. As the shadow thorns struck with the precision of a seasoned killer, Charles stepped out of the vortex and almost at once raised his wand and unleashed his most powerful single-target charm. Sectum Sempra, his spell sliced through like a sword. Compared to his last fight with the Acromantula, his control over Sectum Sempra had deepened. Even against these bizarre and ferocious 5-legged beasts, it ripped devastatingly. 2 juvenile heads toppled. Charles didn't pause to savor the kill. He sent another Sectum Sempra toward a 4th juvenile while drawing a baseball bat from his cloak and swinging it in a brutal arc. The air cracked. The force behind the blow was immense, enough to rival strikes used against a North Sea kraken. The juvenile beast's frail body could not withstand it. Flesh burst with sickening sounds. Blood mist exploded through the red fur. The monster's twisted head shriveled. In the space of heartbeats, 4 of the juveniles beside the pute fruit were dead. 1 remained, hit by Charles' second Sectum Sempra, but not yet finished. A thin scrap of flesh still clung to its neck, keeping the head from falling. The wounded creature stumbled toward the center of the island. Charles' face went cold. He couldn't let it escape. What if there were more juveniles or even adults hiding toward the island's interior? That would ruin his harvest. He called softly, "Shadow thorns." The shadow vortex reappeared, and Charles stepped into it. He passed through the shadow passage and emerged not far behind the fleeing juvenile. A few paces closed the distance. He raised his wand without hesitation. Sectum sempra. The final juvenile collapsed, motionless. Charles allowed himself a brief, relieved breath. For now, there would be no surprises to interfere with the harvest. He was about to return to the poot fruit when something beyond the jungle caught his eye. Past the road, the wounded beast had fled. A building rose among the trees, solemn, grand, and unmistakably temple-like. Charles froze. In every ancient text he had read, the two wizarding families on the island had been ordinary wizards before the five-legged beasts ran rampant. They did not believe in gods and would not have built a temple. How could there be a temple here? Unless the Macboon family had built it after their transformation into five-legged beasts, but a temple built by such creatures made less sense. What would they worship? He glanced at the temple's outer wall. Strange, eerie patterns crawled across the stone. The moment he saw them, a deep, intricate, evil resonance tapped at the edges of his mind. Dark, ancient knowledge stirred as if answering. On his system panel, a single line of text began to form. Ancient Dark Arts. Chapter 179. Plans, Outbreaks, New Variants. When the words Ancient Dark Magic slowly formed on the system panel, Xia Sprout's eyes went wide. His heart thudded. He had already seen what ancient shadow magic could do through the shadow thorns. If shadow magic performed like that, what could ancient dark magic be capable of? As he stared at the patterns carved on the temple, it felt as if a stream of knowledge poured into him. The glow of the words ancient dark magic deepened and deepened. A thought rose in Xia Sprout's mind. If merely observing the patterns had this effect, what would happen if he entered the temple? Maybe he could acquire at least diamond-grade ancient dark magic, or even epic or legendary. He inhaled and moved his feet. Then he took a hard step backward. He bit the tip of his tongue, tasted blood, and let the stinging pain clear his head. He forced his eyes away from the temple. The words ancient dark magic on the panel immediately faded. A wash of loss swept through him, but he only stepped back faster. He only relaxed when he reached a place where the temple was out of sight. He let out a long breath and wiped a thin sheen of cold sweat from his forehead. That was close. That temple probably didn't just contain ancient dark magic. It radiated a strange magic that could ensnare the mind. After the Macboon family were turned into five-legged beasts, the ministry had commissioned 3 transfiguration masters to try to restore them to wizards. They had all been eaten. That had to be the influence of this peculiar magic. If it had been anyone else, anyone with the slightest taste for the dark arts, they would have been drawn right into the temple. Fortunately, Xia Sprout had kept his guard up on Doraria Island from the start. His goal had been very clear. Perhaps entering the temple would grant tremendous power, but he did not need to take that risk. Only when no other way remained did one risk everything. Power gained at no cost usually concealed an unacceptable price. He had come to Doraria Island for one thing: Pute fruit. He had it now. His mission was accomplished. Compared to chasing whatever power hid in the temple, it was far better to stick to the plan, plant steadily, collect rewards. That was far more reliable. He turned and left without looking back. The experience, however, had put him on guard. He needed to monitor his mental state more carefully. Occlumency had to be on the agenda. Resistance to mental magics. There were too many things in the magical world that could affect the mind. He returned to the field where he'd found the Pute fruit. Seeing the ripe fruit awaiting harvest pushed all distracting thoughts aside. He smiled. This trip had already been worthwhile. There were extra gains, too. Several young five-legged beast corpses lay nearby. The blood of that strange 5X-level creature had never appeared on the black market. It was one of the rarest magical creature bloods, a treasure for dark wizards who specialized in black magic transformation. For Xia Sprout, its greatest value was as material for cultivating blood emeralds. Blood emeralds transformed from 3 different bloods could yield platinum-grade rewards. If he could collect 7 types of blood, the payoff would be astonishing. He already had dragon, acromantula, North Sea kraken, and 5-legged beast, 4 of 7. He wasn't far from his goal. He harvested a large bag of pute fruit and packed them into an enchanted Chalman family box with an undetectable extension charm. He also bottled several large portions of fresh five-legged beast blood from the carcasses. A deafening sound rose from the beach, then gradually died down. Sprout's chest tightened. The fight between Quirrell and the five-legged beasts had reached its conclusion. He looked at Eugene. Eugene nodded, snapped his fingers, and led Sprout away. With a dizzying lurch, they apparated away from Doraria Island. Sprout handed the box of blood and pute fruit to Eugene. "Take these back to Sprout Island," he said. His gaze lingered on the deep sea, the route he had directed the two-faced man to use for entering and leaving Doraria Island's protective magic. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He had led Quirrell to Doraria Island and dealt him a serious loss. Quirrell might think he'd been duped and let it go, or he might suspect a deliberate trap and seek revenge. Sprout didn't care what Quirrell believed. He only wanted to make sure Quirrell suffered a hard blow, one that would keep him from wasting time on Sprout again or trying to use him. Sprout plunged into the sea. Water enhancement settled over him. The ocean felt like home, washing him in a clarity and vigor he had never felt before. On the system panel, countless ability names glowed. Sprout's eyes fixed on poison. By itself, the ability to let his blood contain controllable toxins was unremarkable. But combined with black magic transformation, it could work wonders. He had once used black magic transformation to extract a giant killer toxin from his own blood, one tailored to slay giant beasts, and it had made the North Sea Kraken wary. Before that, he had concocted hundreds of different blood poisons, all of which he had given to Quirrell via absorbed parchments. While Quirrell had regained much power by ingesting Sprout's blood, hundreds of poisons also lurked inside him, waiting for detonation. Normally, that trick might have failed on Quirrell, a master of black magic transformation. But after the brutal fight on Doraria Island, Quirrell was at his weakest. The poisons were waiting for this moment. Sprout needed only a fleeting opportunity. He watched the protective magic in the deep ocean. A moment later, a figure enveloped in black smoke erupted from inside, frantically fleeing while deranged roars echoed across the seabed. "Dumbledore," he screamed. "You insidious, cunning old man, you tricked me." Quirrell's face was pale, his mind full of Lord Voldemort's roaring voice. He ground out, "Master, something's wrong. This is a trap. Could it be Sprout? From the start, maybe he led us into it." Lord Voldemort's voice was cold. "Quirrell, you fool. Do you really think a small wizard could deceive me? How did he stand against those five-legged beasts and that temple?" His tone carried unease and dread. "The curse is in there. Even at my peak, I'd have to be careful. Besides Dumbledore, who could create such a thing? I think Sprout was used by Dumbledore. That insidious old man never misses a chance to use others." As Voldemort and Quirrell bickered, and Voldemort continuously waved his wand to deal with the curses he'd contracted from Doraria Island, Sprout watched from afar. A cold gleam flickered in his eyes. Poison lit up on the panel. The hundreds of toxins Quirrell had swallowed detonated in an instant. Quirrell, who was rising toward the surface, convulsed with waves of pain. Sometimes it felt like burning fire, sometimes like being frozen solid, sometimes like thousands of knives slicing through his veins. He screamed. At the same time, from a deep trench on the seabed, eyes opened one by one. A colossal creature tore out of the darkness, tentacles like giant pythons wrapped around Quirrell. "North Sea Kraken?" Quirrell gasped. "How could it be here?" Voldemort's fury reached a peak. "What else would it be? Are you still blaming a small wizard? What ability could he have to command the North Sea Kraken? Dumbledore, you again!" As he roared, tentacles tightened, but Voldemort took full control of Quirrell's body. He swung the wand violently. The Kraken's tentacles writhed in terrible pain. Several were torn cleanly in two. Quirrell, still shrouded in black smoke, staggered clear of the water and vanished. Sprout watched the entire sequence. Regret flickered across his face. He had calculated so much, but still could not bury Quirrell in the deep sea. No wonder Dumbledore and Voldemort had once made the whole wizarding world tremble. Such sorcery was beyond imagining. Even a genius like Snape had seemed limited in their presence. Still, Sprout let out a quiet breath. killing Quirrell that easily had never been likely. In the original story, a weakened Voldemort had escaped from Hogwarts. Now Voldemort had recovered more than half his strength. He had the knack for survival. But Quirrell had likely paid dearly to escape. The power he'd regained from Shia Sprout's blood probably exhausted, leaving him close to his pre-revival state. The unicorn curse and the hundreds of poisons Shia Sprout had left would plague him for a long time. With the little power Quirrell had and so little time left in the semester, he wouldn't have many options. If he didn't go after the Philosopher's Stone and instead targeted Shia Sprout would be impressed. But that was unlikely. Voldemort wanted the stone more than anything. For now, Shia Sprout could breathe easier. Quirrell would not bother him for a while. He could concentrate on planting. They returned to Sprout Island. Eugene waited anxiously and sighed with relief when Shia Sprout appeared. "Mr. Shia Sprout," Eugene said, "I'm so glad you're all right. Did you deal with him?" Shia Sprout shook his head. "No, he's still too hard to kill. But the good news is he won't bother me again for a while. I can focus on farming." He opened the box and took out the pute fruit. Trolls and Eugene gathered around, staring at the strange fruit. Shia Sprout explained, "This is pute fruit. Cut it into pieces and plant it, and new fruit will grow. One pute fruit can keep a person from feeling hungry or thirsty for several days. If we plant our fields full of pute fruit, we'll never go hungry again." The troll's small eyes lit up. For them, after a stable home, the only thing that mattered was not going hungry. They handled a pute fruit with clumsy fingers, sniffed it, hesitated to eat it, then set it down again. A small mountain of the fruit filled them with simple joy. Their faces shone with renewed respect for Shia Sprout. "Gronak," they chattered. "Gronak." Then Shia Sprout brought out a bag of karate grass seeds. Eugene's expression changed. "This is karate grass?" he said. "At the Chalman household, I used to see Porgy Chalman smoking it. The upper classes love it." Shia Sprout nodded. "Some of these seeds are even better than the best karate grass currently grown. If we cultivate it, karate grass can become Sprout Island's main cash crop. We can make money from it. Eugene, I'll teach you how to maintain karate grass. You'll be in charge of it and take a share of the proceeds, enough for your daily needs. When we expand, you could become the wealthiest house elf here. You took a big risk coming to Doraria Island with me. You deserve the reward." Eugene stood stunned, eyes shining. He wiped them over and over. His bleak life suddenly had direction. Shia Sprout's eyes fell on the five-legged beast blood again. In ferocity, that creature outmatched even the Acromantula. He had another idea. He had noticed before that different bloods yielded different rewards when used to cultivate blood emeralds. What reward would five-legged beast blood produce? Back in the little greenhouse, he carefully distributed the five-legged beast blood among a batch of luminous mushroom mycelia. With his prior experience, he had become quick and precise. Moments later, a sudden change swept through the mycelia. Instead of the usual translucent emerald sheen, red mycelial threads sprouted, fuzzy as hair, a sickly crimson that gave off an uneasy impression. Shia Sprout's pupils narrowed. Another new variant? On the system panel, a line of text appeared. Under the strong influence of five-legged beast blood, your luminous mushroom has produced an unknown new variant. His heart skipped. It was a brand new variant, perhaps because the five-legged beast was not purely natural, but magically modified. The blood altered the growth. Subsequent text showed the rewards. Shia Sprout's expression flickered with uncertainty. Cultivate this variant to maturity to receive rewards. Curse Studies Insight, Silver Grade. Five-Legged Beast Transfiguration Insight, Iron Grade. Chapter 180, Curse, Terminal Illness, I'm Not Human Anymore. When the reward information for the new variant of luminous mushroom flashed up, a strange light crossed Charles' eyes. Curseology? That was an obscure, unsettling corner of the dark arts. Many mysteries the magical world hadn't solved yet were tied to curses. In some cases, a werewolf's bite could turn the victim into a werewolf, an insidious, stubborn curse the magical community hadn't been able to reverse. Only a handful of dark wizards studied curses, and for good reason. Curses were terrifying, precisely because they were so hard to defend against. History was full of powerful wizards felled by them. Even in the original tale, The Death Eaters tried every trick to assassinate Dumbledore. One of the plans relied on a necklace bearing a potent curse. They were perceptive to try it, and yet they still hoped the curse would take Dumbledore. That alone demonstrated how strange curses could be. Silver-level proficiency in curseology, Charles murmured. That could come in handy someday, he thought. In the original story, the Resurrection Stone ring carried a powerful dark arts curse. After Dumbledore put it on, even Snape's potion couldn't fully remove it, only bought him about a year. That's why Dumbledore had to cram so much into his final months. If Dumbledore had lived an extra year or two, I might have enjoyed another year or two of stable farming. I need curseology to reach Diamond or Epic, and with Snape's potion there could be hope. His gaze slid to the other reward, five-legged beast transfiguration. He frowned. As the name implied, it was a black magic transformation that turned a wizard into a five-legged beast. That was profoundly unusual and unsettling. He'd seen five-legged beasts before, and they were beyond the scope of ordinary human tactics. Even the two-faced man had to reveal his true strength to handle them. Human bodies were simply inadequate. If power-hungry dark wizards got their hands on this, they'd be ecstatic. Charles, however, had no appetite for that. Maybe there's a deeper secret of Doraria Island hidden in this, he considered. If I ever have to return to Doraria Island, especially to investigate that temple, five-legged beast transfiguration could help. If not, it's still a useful reference for improving my black magic transformation studies. Satisfied, he weighed his gains from the Doraria Island expedition. A smile crept over his face. A large haul of poot fruit, rare variants like the red-haired mushroom, and the severely wounded two-faced man. This trip was rich. I just hope the two-faced man recovers. He decided on a name for the mushroom cultivated from five-legged beast blood. Since it sprouted red hairs, red-haired mushroom seemed apt. Far away on a reef, Quirrell crawled out of the sea with a pale face and a groan. He spat blackish-red blood that reeked of rot. A few drops hitting the water poisoned the fish and shrimp for 100 meters, leaving them floating. He clenched his teeth. "Damn it," he rasped. A weak voice echoed in his mind, Lord Voldemort's. "It's a poison. You're poisoned with something strange and complex. Dumbledore did this. Who knows when? I've suppressed the worst of it for now." Relief flickered through Quirrell, and then the voice turned grave. "But that isn't the worst of it. You drank the blood of a three-headed unicorn. That put a powerful unicorn curse in you. Alone, it wouldn't kill you outright, just slowly torment you. But on that island, in that temple, you picked up another ancient, vicious curse. It's bound to your blood and linked with the unicorn curse, making everything worse. And the poison is catalyzing mutation. Every second it's changing. This was a deliberate trap. Dumbledore has gone too far." Quirrell felt his courage drain. Master, can I still be saved?" he whispered. Voldemort was pragmatic. "Detox and curse removal are not my specialties. Disguise yourself and go to St. Mungo's Department of Poison and Curse. I'll do what I can." Quirrell disguised himself and apparated to St. Mungo's. He staggered into the poison and curse ward and promptly blacked out. When he woke, he was lying in a hospital bed. The clean ceiling and the scent of disinfectant calmed him. Around him stood doctors in white coats who introduced themselves. The head of the Poison and Curse Department, a senior in curseology, a senior in magical poisonology, and an elderly professor who said he'd graduated from Durmstrang and had rushed over from Germany with other professors, forming the backbone of curse medicine in the magical world. Quirrell felt an odd surge of gratitude. Despite St. Mungo's reputation for profiteering, they had assembled top experts just for him. He almost wanted to promise the Dark Lord he'd pay them back when he had power, if he survived. "Then it can definitely be cured, right?" he asked, voice trembling. The experts exchanged looks. The head doctor's tone rose with a clinical enthusiasm that chilled Quirrell. "The condition can't be solved." Silence hit him like a blow. "But St. Mungo's will treat you free of charge," the doctor continued. "If you accept our terms, we can arrange for whatever you'd like. Your case will be published, your contribution to curse studies immortalized." "What paper? What arrangements?" Quirrell demanded. The Durmstrang professor stepped forward, eyes glittering. "Do you know how rare this is? Complex curses and poisons intertwined, symptoms unseen in curse studies. You're a living milestone for curseology. We cannot save you, but think of the good. Your condition will push curse research forward. We could name this syndrome after you." Quirrell's face went white with fury. He snatched his wand. If not for hospital commotion, he might have tried killing curse right there. "Name it after me? Go to hell!" He stormed out of St. Mungo's. As the doctors called after him, "Young man, reconsider. With your condition, you have maybe 7 days at most. Consider our terms. Even in death, you could be glorious." He faltered and then collapsed onto the pavement, breath shallow, anger turning to despair. He had been driven by arrogance. He should never have sought out Voldemort alone. If he hadn't tried to control the Dark Lord to gain power, he would still be Professor Quirrell, a brilliant, promising young professor at Hogwarts, not a dying, possessed man. Voldemort's voice slid into his mind again. "Regrets? Afraid of death?" Quirrell's defiance drained. "If you aren't afraid of death, why cling to life by possessing me?" Voldemort laughed coldly. "I will not die. I can always come back. You have only one chance. You can beg me and die terrified, and I'll wait for someone else, or you can choose differently." Quirrell's pupils dilated. "What choice?" "The Philosopher's Stone," Voldemort said softly. "Its power can remake you." "But I won't last 7 days," Quirrell said. "My power is too weak. We can't get it in time." "I can keep you alive," Voldemort replied. "I might even boost your strength a notch. The problem is, those curses and poisons affect humans. If you weren't human, the unicorn curse would be less effective, the five-legged beast curse would be nullified, and the poisons would no longer affect you as they do now." Quirrell's breath stopped. "Not human anymore?" Voldemort produced a vial of dark blood, the five-legged beast's blood he had collected from the shoreline's carcasses. "I can transform you into something akin to a five-legged beast. I'll conceal most of the features. You'll need a wider robe to keep appearing human at Hogwarts. We'll bide our time, seize the Philosopher's Stone, and then you will have a new life." Images of the grotesque beach creatures flashed through Quirrell's mind. He shivered, but the primal will to survive overrode his revulsion. He clenched his jaw. "Do it." Voldemort's voice was pleased. "I saw potential in you when we met in Albania. Prepare for a new body, one far stronger than your current one. It will take a month to complete the transformation. Take leave from Hogwarts. You weren't needed in defense against the dark arts anyway." Quirrell sent a letter requesting a 1-month medical leave, and then, burning with a newfound hunger for retribution, he seethed. What about Charles? If it weren't for him, he should be punished. Voldemort assuaged him, partly to keep his host compliant. Charles was probably manipulated by Dumbledore. He's still loyal. Once your transformation is done, he will be punished. If you want, you can do it yourself. Quirrell nodded, bitterly satisfied, and went to Nocturne Alley to gather experimental materials. Early the next morning, Charles stepped out of the little greenhouse and heard the news in the corridor. "Professor Quirrell suddenly fell ill and has taken a full month off," someone said. Students groaned. They liked Defense Against the Dark Arts, one of the few practical combat classes, and the suspension of the class for a month toward the end of term made them miserable. Charles frowned. Quirrell taking a month off. What did that mean? Quirrell wouldn't give up on the Philosopher's Stone. He'd be back. But then Charles' expression eased. 1 month. His plants, piranha algae, guardian tree, devil's snare, were nearly mature. The faint reward light spheres over them were almost full. 1 month was plenty to finish a full harvest. Beyond that, he could use the free time to learn occlumency from Snape to guard against mental magic. A plan forming, Charles set off towards Snape's office.